Full Metal Storm, Battle of the Machines. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 295, The Escaped One. Lin Wei gently lifted the hair that fell to her ears. There is still little discovery and human knowledge about the Teichu stone fragment. The documents unearthed from Gixu rarely mention this aspect. Only one stone tablet, Teichu Chronicle, mentions some content, which should be related to your question. Luo Yang couldn't help but look forward to it. Lin Wei said softly, Teiji diagram, Teisu pattern, Teishi talisman, Tei Lu, Teichu seal. Luo Yang couldn't help but repeated after hearing it. Lin Wei continued, you were granted the Teichu stone fragment by King Jiuying City. You should know that there is a Teikai-like pattern on that kind of strange stone. That should be the so-called Teikai diagram. If this is correct, then the better the quality of the Teichu stone fragment, the corresponding pattern may change. The Teikai diagram may change into Teisu pattern may change into Teishifu and so on. This is my guess. As for whether the Teichu stone fragment can be upgraded to correspond to a higher level of Shenzang, I'm not sure. However, Lin Wei paused and said, if two Teichu stone fragments are put together, they should merge into one. Luo Yang couldn't help but look at the girl. How can you be sure? He saw the two fragments merge with his own eyes, but Lin Wei did not seem to be someone who had seen this phenomenon with her own eyes, so she asked this question. Lin Wei's eyes flashed. Almost all the information related to the Teichu stone points to the same thing. The Teichu stone is always longing to return to the one. This one is the one in the 50 great Daos, 49 heavenly derivations, and one of them is missing in the Book of Changes. It's also the beginning. It's the original appearance of the Teichu stone. Luo Yan didn't quite understand the original appearance of the Teichu stone. What does it look like? Lin Wei shook her head, blinked, and said, there is a theory that Yambu and Gixu are the yin and yang fish in the Teikai diagram. Please note that it is only the Teikai diagram, not even the Teisu pattern. So, the Teichu stone may be the state before the chaos of the universe. So it may be the missing one. And once it is restored to its original state, no one can imagine that state. Luo Yang pinched his eyebrows and said seriously, I'm really not a good scientist. I can't imagine that state at all. Lin Wei's face was cold. This is no longer scientific research. Luo Yan also thought it made sense. He thought about it and planned to ask Lin Wei about the next stage of the Eye of Truth. Suddenly, he heard footsteps. He looked up and saw a group of people striding towards him. The uniforms they wore were military style, with large lapels, double-breasted buttons, and belts. Black clothes, black pants, and black military boots. But the edges of the cuffs had golden piping, and the cuff studs were also golden, with dragon claw patterns on them. Student Lin Wei. The leader stretched out his hand to Lin Wei. Luo Yan raised his eyebrows and reached out to grab the other person's wrist. The man looked at Luo Yan and suddenly burst into a wave, shaking Luo Yan's hand away. Luo Yan's pupils dilated slightly, and he felt a sharp pain in his palm. At this moment, a silver cross appeared in his eyes, and the Yuan Li in his body roared. At this time, he heard Lin Wei say, it's okay, student Luo, they are not bad people. Luo Yan looked at Lin Wei, who had a calm expression, and then stepped back 2 steps. She carefully looked at the man who had just shaken her wrist away. This man was definitely a master. After this look, she found that he was tall and thin, especially his cheeks, which showed little flesh. But his eyes were bright, as if they were filled with fire. This is Xing Feng, Uncle Shen. Lin Wei introduced generously. Uncle Shen is the security supervisor of my teacher. At this time, the teacher Lin Wei was referring to was not the instructors of Basin Academy, but Dr. Jiuying who led her to study Gixu characters. Uncle Shen, the teacher came to Guangling. Xing Feng nodded. Drive Jiuying wants you to help. Okay. Lin Wei glanced at Luo Yan. Student Luo, let's talk next time. Then she followed Xing Feng and his party. Watching them leave, Luo Yan remembered that he encountered the Xiangang Dragon Riders convoy when he entered the city yesterday. It seems that Dr. Jiuying should have been in that convoy at that time. The Xiangang Dragon Riders should have come to Guangling to protect this doctor. The Xiangang Dragon Riders needed to be dispatched for protection. Lin Wei's teacher was not a small figure. He should be an important person. But what would such a big shot do in Guangling? He wouldn't come to visit his students. Luo Yan closed his eyes slightly, then looked at the bookshelf not far away. How long do you plan to hide? There was a bang behind the bookshelf, followed by a soft shout, and then Zheng Shan came out with a laugh. Old Luo, you have sharp ears. You heard everything. Then came Li Boheng, holding a book, pushing his glasses with his other hand and saying, I came to read books, and it was just a coincidence that I met them. Finally, Bei, who was wearing a rabbit hat, looked at her toes guiltily and pulled the rabbit ears on her hat. Asterisk 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 at night. Luo Yan, wearing a cloak, carrying Huan Lang on his back, and Kigu hanging from his waist, came to the alley. Looking up, the former audio and video store has now become a bar. The two words Red House were lit up by a circle of light bulbs, flashing a psychedelic light in the alley. There was a billboard at the door of the bar, with the words new store opening, 50% off on drinks, written on it in a twisted manner. Luo Yan opened the door and walked in. A voice inside said welcome weekly, and then said her captain is here. It was Wei Junai, with one arm, and dressed as a waiter. He looked a bit unpopular. However, Luo Yan did not expect to make money with this bar. He just used it as a cover-up, so he did not care. He nodded, and then saw the fake Taoist Wenzhao at the bar. Wenzhao still had a Taoist bun, but he looked out of place in the clothes of a bartender. Call Guan Peng over. Luo Yan sat on the high stool next to the bar. Wenzhao nodded, waved to a team member, gave a few instructions, and asked him to go to Zijiu Tang to find someone. Then he said to Luo Yan with a smile, Captain, how do you think we have arranged it? Luo Yan simply glanced around and nodded slightly. Wenzhao lowered his voice and said, 2 nights ago, the people in flowery shirts came again, but Zhang Yi sent them all back. Well, of course they turned into corpses. As they were talking, the door of the bar was suddenly kicked open. With a bang, everyone except Luo Yan looked towards the door. They saw men in flowery shirts coming in one after another. They looked around, then kicked over the tables and chairs and said coldly, who is the boss here? Chapter 296 Impressive. Luo Yan didn't move, but just glanced at Wenzhao, who understood and walked out of the counter with a smile on his face. What do you want to talk to my boss about? A man in flowery clothes sneered. What do you not know? Do you know that, if you open a bar in the Nanfeng Tang area, you have to say hello to Alaki? Don't you know any rules? Or do you think we Huashan are not serious? When he said the last part, his voice was stern and his eyebrows were raised, enough to scare away ordinary people. Wenzhao naturally didn't buy his tricks, and said with a smile, we are new here, and don't know the rules. But we think that opening a bar really has nothing to do with you Huashan, right? The Huashan gang members immediately sneered. You really don't want to drink a toast? Wait until Brother Jing comes, and see how you die. As they were talking, a group of people rushed in from the door of the bar. The person in front said, why are you all crowded together? If there are seats, why don't you find a seat by yourself? Brother Jing is here. Brother Jing, they are so arrogant, and don't take Lei Qi and Huashan seriously. Luo Yan looked at the door, and saw that the person who had just spoken was Jing, the backbone of Huashan who had fought with Iron Horse that day. Jing felt the gaze and looked back. Seeing Luo Yan in a cloak, he was as if he had seen a ghost. He was startled and jumped back. The gang members of Huashan were stunned in place, wondering what the Brother Jing they worshipped as a god had seen to be so scared. No wonder Jing was shocked. Jing remembered clearly that day, when Luo Yan killed the strongest backbone member old ghost Chen Zhu, with a single knife. It was hard for him to forget that when Chen Zhu was split in half, his internal organs and blood all flowed to his feet. Even a brave and aggressive person like him vomited all night that night. Therefore, he had a deep impression of Luo Yan. Unexpectedly, he saw Luo Yan, the evil star, again in a small bar today. Jing turned pale and sweated profusely. Luo Yan half turned around and looked at Jing. Aren't you looking for the bar owner? I'm him. Several members of the Huishan gang immediately pointed at Luo Yan and shouted, "Boy, you are kidding your Huishan grandfather. Take a piss and look at yourself. You haven't even grown all your hair yet. How can you imitate others to be a boss? If you are the boss, then come over and apologize. You dare to kill our people. You are tired of living, right?" The curses filled the entire bar, and the sound was so loud that even the deaf could hear it. Unexpectedly, just as the gang members finished cursing, a figure suddenly flashed in front of them. Bang! Someone was slapped in the face and his front teeth flew out. Bang! Someone was kicked and vomited violently while holding his stomach. When the figure stopped, all the gang members who had just yelled and cursed fell to the ground, vomiting blood and wailing, unable to get up. The other gang members were confused because that person was aging. Jing tried to force a few smiles on his face, but his smiles were really uglier than crying. Misunderstanding, misunderstanding. We are in the wrong place. Goodbye. What a joke. Who dares to ask this little devil who kills without blinking an eye to apologize? If you want to die, don't drag me with you. Jing wanted to get away with it. Unexpectedly, the man in the bar said lightly, "You are not in the wrong place. It's sus. Go tell Leiki that I will visit you, and you don't have to come again." Jing lowered his head. Yes, I will go back and report to Master Qi truthfully." Luo Yan then waved his hand. Jing was relieved and was about to leave, but then the damn voice sounded again. Wait. Jing had to take back his foot and asked cautiously, "Do you have anything else to do? Your people have damaged a lot of things." Jing immediately said, "Pay compensation. I will pay it right away." He took out his card and passed it through the card reader that Wenzhou handed over with a smile and gave all the hundreds of thousands of unions in his card to the Red House bar. Wenzhou showed the amount to Luo Yan. After Luo Yan looked at it, he said, "Send them a dozen beers." "This, you are too polite," Jing said with a forced smile. After these people left, Guanpeng walked into the bar and saw Wei Junai and others setting up tables. "Old Guan, this way." Wenzhou behind the bar waved to the middle-aged man. Guanpeng just saw Luo Yan sitting next to the bar, walked over and said respectfully, "Mr. Chigi." Luo Yan nodded. "When can your people be discharged from the hospital?" Guanpeng's face was flushed. "At most 1 month. By then, I promise to give you at least 20 good guys who can jump and jump." Luo Yan asked again, "How much do you know about Leiki?" Guanpeng thought for a while and said, "In addition to being the leader of Huishan, Leiki also has contacts with people above. I mean the big shots in the city. Huishan is the largest organization in Xifengtang, with many gang members and many industries. It is said that Huishan's largest capital chain is the smuggling of giant parasites, which other organizations cannot get involved in. His family is unique. But recently Leiki's financial backers seem to be in some trouble, and Huishan's situation is not as good as before, so when they heard that our Iron Horse had problems, they immediately wanted to swallow us up to strengthen their strength." Luo Yan said, "Oh, smuggling parasites, this is not a business that can be done with courage alone." As far as he knows, big guys like Huang Yuanhang and Luo Xianai have their hands in this business. I wonder who is the financial backer behind Leiki to support him in this business. After chatting with Guanpeng for a while, Luo Yan finally said, "I will go to meet Leiki after your people are discharged from the hospital in a month." Guanpeng naturally knew that this meeting was definitely not simple and nodded immediately. "Okay, I'll take you there when the time comes." Luo Yan nodded, asked Wenzhou to get a bottle of good wine, and let Guanpeng take it away. He looked at the fake Taoist priest. "Has Captain Zhang Ze's previous mecha been recovered by the branch?" In the previous battle of the Mustang base, Luo Yan saw the mecha of the Zhu and Ming 4 teams, and then he remembered that Zhang Ze, as the captain of Team 7, also had an advanced mecha. But when he took over Team 7, even Yukiashu didn't remind him about the mecha. Luo Yan felt strange, so he asked. Wenzhou shook his head. "How can that be possible? The mecha is currently in the hands of Team 3. After Captain Zhang Ze died, Captain Liu Zhao of Team 3 used some unknown method to use some channels within the branch and some items to get Captain Zhang Ze's mecha Green Snake away. Liu Zhao." Luo Yan stretched out his hand and tapped lightly on the bar, then jumped off the high stool. "I see. You guys are busy. I'll come back in a few days. Also, say hello to Captain Yu for me. Glancing at Wenzhou, Luo Yan walked out of the bar. The fake Taoist shrank his neck and said with some fear, although Captain Chigi is young, he is much more difficult to serve than Captain Zhangze. Chapter 297, Breakthrough. Intermediate Level 3. The next day at noon, Luo Yan came to the cafeteria. Student Luo. Yang Lix's voice came, and the guy opened his arms, ran towards Luo Yan in a charming manner. Luo Yan glared at him. Yang Lixi immediately stopped, put down his arms, coughed dryly, and laughed. What a coincidence. You are here to eat too, and so am I. How about joining us? Luo Yan did not comment, and walked straight into the cafeteria. Yang Lixi and his two followers followed closely behind. The son of the director of the construction bureau took 2 steps forward and lowered his voice and said, seriously, student Luo, our medicine valley is almost gone. Luo Yang couldn't help but stop and looked at Yang Lixi with some doubts. He thought this shouldn't be the case. He had picked up Itao and the Chu family, so who else would dare to take over the medicine valley? Yang Lixi shook his head. It's not what you think. It's a giant beast. A high-level giant beast suddenly ran into the medicine valley. Fortunately, it ran away before it went deep. A high-level giant beast. Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly. He was no longer the rookie who had just entered school. Now he knew that the upper-level beasts were intelligent and would not run to the safe zone for no reason. Then they suddenly left. Luo Yan had a hunch. There was something changing in the misty canyon. At this time, Yang Likai nervously pulled Luo Yan's sleeve and looked to the left. It's classmate Liu. I went to find her several times after you came back. I was rejected every time. Classmate Liu has worked so hard. I want to give her a gift. What do you think I should give her? Luo Yang couldn't help but look at him. Yang Likai laughed dryly and suddenly said, ha, classmate Luo, what's wrong with your eyes? Am I dazzled? Why do I feel like your eyes are on fire? Luo Yan was startled and then saw himself in the window not far away, his eyes burning with a faint scarlet, like a rising flame. He immediately turned around and left without caring about eating. Yang Likai called out from behind, student Luo, you haven't given me any advice yet. After returning to the dormitory, Luo Yan closed the door and came to the mirror. Sure enough, he saw that his eyes were burning red, and circles of fire appeared in his red eyes, layer upon layer, and he didn't know how many circles there were. Breakthrough? Luo Yan looked around. As before, the world in his eyes became a stick figure, and everything was restored to the most basic lines. But it was no longer black and white, but a layer of light, as thin as smoke. In addition, various numbers still appeared, and he didn't find anything special for the time being. Luo Yan closed his eyes and opened them again after a while. The red pupils had returned to normal. He thought about it, found the phone of Black Witch, and logged into the internal network, opened the information section, and searched for eye of true suchness. Immediately, a page of relevant information appeared. Black Witch really had this kind of hidden information. Luo Yan was refreshed and browsed all the way, and found a paid information. He spent 30 contribution points and bought this information. The fragments of the primordial stone can allow all kinds of divine treasures to transform and evolve, and provide opportunities for the transformation of divine treasures. Take the key seeing eye as an example. After transforming into the barrier breaking eye, it can break through to the next stage, the eye of truth. If there is a great opportunity, it can be further broken through. Break through to the next stage, the Wu Wang blazing eye. Wu Wang blazing eye, recognize delusion, break delusion, burn delusion, put down the phone. Luo Yan finally knew the name of his new pupil technique, Wu Wang blazing eye. Asterisk 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 more than a month has passed. In the training hall, Luo Yan was practicing. The Yuan force in the air was like a tide, surging towards Luo Yan in waves, drilling into his pores all over his body, and merging into his meridians and blood vessels. His Yuan Shen Phantom was also practicing. The green dragon was no longer simply absorbing Yuan force, but was swallowing and spitting out Yuan force. After the Yuan force was swallowed in and spit out, it mixed with the Yuan force in the air and gradually formed a bull-like breath. At this time, the last river flow in Luo Yan's body was also built up, and the cultivation of the intermediate second level came to the final moment. Luo Yan made a concerted effort and consciously guided the thousands of rivers in his body to rush to the Danshan. Suddenly, he felt an invisible barrier. The Danshan was like an independent universe, with an invisible barrier separating it. Luo Yan activated viewing mountains and seas to drive the rivers to continuously collide with the invisible barrier, trying to create cracks in it and completely smash it. At the same time, his soul phantom, the speed at which the green dragon exhaled and inhaled Yuanli also increased, making the ball of breath turn faster and constantly throwing out impurities. During this process, the ball gradually shrank, and the Yuanli breath slowly condensed into a solid body. After a while, the breath condensed into a light ball the size of an eyeball, and was swallowed by the green dragon in one gulp. After swallowing the light ball, the green dragon opened its mouth and roared silently. 2 bulges appeared on its head, the scales fell off, the skin and flesh opened, and 2 small, golden keratinous objects rose from inside. When 2 keratinous things grew on the forehead of the green dragon, the river in Luo Yan's body suddenly set off a tide. The tide gathered into a line and slammed hard on the Danshan barrier with an extremely turbulent posture. Crack. Luo Yan heard a sound like glass cracking in his body, and then he felt a slight shock in his lower abdomen, and then the streams of Yuanli River flowed in without any obstacles. Entering Luo Yan's Danshan, the river flow gathered to form a Yuanli ocean. Suddenly, the Yuanshan phantom seemed to feel something, and the green dragon kept swimming and rejoicing on the phantom. A green bead also condensed on the belt of the Yuanshan phantom. In that bead, there was a huge wave, as if there was an ocean hidden. Luo Yan opened his eyes and slowly exhaled. He stood up. At this time, he could clearly feel that the Yuanli in his body was surging like a tide. Breakthrough. I'm now at the intermediate level 3. Viewing the mountains and seas. Reaching the intermediate level 3 is considered a minor achievement. Luo Yan is now as strong as a mountain, and his internal energy is like the sea. He has initially achieved the goal of gathering the boundless sea with a peak of 10,000 feet. Luo Yan felt it carefully and couldn't help but sigh. The third level and the second level are completely 2 realms. After breaking through to the third level, both the Yuanli and the Qi in blood no longer gradually increase, but directly doubled. If it were me now, I could use a belt of long rainbow twice in a row in a battle, and I would still have some strength to spare. At this rate of practice, maybe I can complete the 5th level of practice by the new year. Forget about the great perfection. I don't have the time to waste on this slow work. Break through the 5th level directly, and then into the practice of advanced skills, and strive to break through to Tangsuan next year. In that case, even if I don't exchange for the anti-poison skills in Black Witch, it won't be a big problem. Speaking of Black Witch, Luo Yan remembered that he had to go see Guan Peng in the evening. All the wounded and Iron Horse were discharged from the hospital yesterday. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 298, Boiling Night 1. Night. Guangling City, Zifengtang. Anshan Majin Hall. The signboard on the Majin Hall flickered, as if the circuit was not in good contact. In the dim corner near the gate, a woman dressed in fancy clothes was pulling a tall and thin man to solicit business. From time to time, the door of the Majin Hall opened, and a burst of crackling shuffling of cards could be heard from inside. Luo Yan pulled down the brim of his cloak, passed by a child selling cigarettes, and pushed open the door of the Majin Hall. Suddenly, he saw a smoky scene. 4 people sat at a table, playing Majin or playing poker. Girls selling cigarettes, alcohol, and snacks shuffled in the hall, and the men watching the scene squatted in the corner eating peanuts and drinking wine. Luo Yan walked through the smoke in the hall and the sound of shuffling and playing cards. A watchman in the corner saw Luo Yan and wanted to stand up, but was pulled by his companion. After looking at his companion's eyes, he sat down again. Luo Yan walked through the hall and came to the office at the back. When he walked in, the owner of the Majin Polo was doing the accounts. Seeing Luo Yan was stunned for a moment, he stood up and said respectfully, "Mr. Chigi, good evening." Then he fumbled under the table for a while. After a while, the wall behind him moved back a little and then opened inside, revealing a small door. "Mr. Wenzhou and his friends are here. They are all waiting for you." Luo Yang nodded and passed by the man named Chen Zhensheng. Chen Zhensheng is indeed the owner of this Majin parlor, but this Majin parlor was bought by Wenzhou for 100,000 half a month ago. But the boss has not changed, but Chen Zhensheng has become Luo Yan's employee. He is still the owner of the Majin parlor and manages this secret base for Luo Yan's Team 7. Tonight, Luo Yan asked the people from Iron Horse to meet in the Majin parlor. Recently, Wenzhou discovered that Huashan has been secretly transferring people, and there are many new faces here in Xifengtang. Guanpeng also said that there were people scouting around Zijiuhutang from time to time, and he thought that Huashan wanted to take some action. This was normal. As the leading organization in the local area, he was repeatedly slapped by him. If Lei Qi was honest enough to wait for him to come, Luo Yan would doubt how he became the boss. Walking into the door, Luo Yan saw a room full of people. In this room, except for the two familiar faces of Wenzhou and Guanpeng, the other 20 people were all strangers. Guanpeng stood up. "Mr. Chigi, these are our people from Tima." Luo Yan activated the Wu Wang burning eyes, and circles of inconspicuous fire patterns appeared silently on his red eyes. In the eyes of others, Chigi's eyes just lit up, and there was nothing unusual. But in Luo Yan's eyes, the strength of these people was clear at a glance. After the breakthrough and promotion of the Eye of Truth, the most obvious change is that Luo Yan no longer needs to stare at the target's information line. He can read the information and voice at a glance. Luo Yan glanced around and nodded slightly. The strength of these people was uneven, barely meeting the requirements and standards of the Black Wizard for the main team. Seeing Luo Yan nod, Guanpeng was relieved. When he came, he was worried that Luo Yan would look down on these guys under his command, but now he is finally relieved. He immediately introduced two of the good players to Luo Yan. "Linzu, my nephew, don't look at his tall and strong appearance. His mind is more delicate than a woman, but he loves to drink," Guanpeng said, while punching the chest of the big man in his 20s. The man named Linzu smiled with his white teeth. "Uncle, what are you talking about? I'm quitting drinking. I'm quitting." Guanpeng glared at him. "It's better if you really quit. If you ruin Mr. Chigi's plan, I'll break your legs." Linzu chuckled and nodded to Luo Yan. This man has the combat power of the 4th level of the primary level, which is considered to be the best among these young people. Zhang Chenayang, Yangzi is a little introverted, but among us, he has the most accurate shooting skills, and is the only sniper left in our Iron Horse. Guanpeng introduced another person. As he said, this young man Zhang Chenayang was a little shy. When he called his name, he forced a few smiles on his face, and held his head with his hands uneasily. After the introduction, Luo Yan was about to speak, when he suddenly heard a faint explosion outside. A moment later, the door opened again, and when Jiuying came in, he whispered in Luo Yan's ear, "Huashan attacked Zijiuhutang and Arbar at the same time. Asterisk 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 go to hell. What are you so proud of? You dare to show off to us? Haha, what red house and black house, good to die." Homemade incendiary bottles were thrown into the window of the bar's red house one after another, causing the inside to burst into flames and explosions. Flames and thick smoke rushed out of the window door and rose into the sky. The fire illuminated the gloomy face of Shannying. Although the fire was burning fiercely, there was no scream in the house for a while, and it was obvious that no one was in the bar. However, even if it was just burning this bar, it was considered to be a vent for Huashan. Shannying could still hear the gunshots coming from the direction of Zijiuhutang. From a distance, he could vaguely see the flames behind the interlaced buildings. Now Zijiuhutang, where the Iron Horse mercenary group was located, was also being attacked by another team of Huashan. That team has more people than the Red House, and they are all fighters transferred back from outside Xifengtang. Each of them is very good at fighting, and they walk in the forbidden area all year round. Everyone is unruly. Especially their leader, Corpse Dog Yang Heo, is notoriously crazy. Even Lei Qi dare not leave him in the city, for fear that he will be bitten by accident one day. If it weren't for dealing with both Iron Horse and Red House at the same time, and guarding against the master called Red Ghost, Lei Qi would not have transferred Yang Heo back. Thinking of Yang Heo, Jiuying had a headache, and couldn't help rubbing his temples, whispering, I hope this matter will end soon. Jude Building. This is a famous restaurant in Xifengtang, and it is also a property under the name of Huashan. Tonight, Jude Building is decorated with lights and colors, and you can hear the opera being performed on the stage that was just set up in the building at night from a few streets away. At this time, the sound of suona and gongs and drums was loud in the building. Lei Qi, who was in his early 50s, with a square face and a fat body in middle age, was holding a pair of walnuts in his hands. His face was rosy. On the left and right were a pair of young ladies, with eyes as white as autumn water and skin so tender that it seemed that water would come out if pinched. One was peeling grapes, and the other was brewing fragrant tea. They took care of Lei Qi in every possible way. A big show started in the restaurant, and the music was deafening. Then a modified RV rushed over outside the restaurant street, scaring countless passers-by, but Lei Qi in the building didn't know it at all. Instead, the men in flowered shirts at the door of the restaurant stood up one by one, with alert expressions, watching the car stop in front of the building. One of them immediately stepped forward, pointed at the driver in the cab and shouted angrily, "Is this where you park? Drive the car away immediately." Chapter 299, Boiling Night 2. Xifengtang Land Conservation Bureau. When the middle-aged and bald director of the Land Conservation Bureau, Chen Kangan, returned to the bureau, a security guard hurried over and said, "Director, you are finally back. The red shirts are working in Jiuying and Cheoman Street. The residence hotline is about to explode." Chen Kangan glanced at him and said, "You called me back for this? Lei Qi informed us a few days ago. Didn't I say that we should turn a blind eye to this matter? Those bastards will be punished by God sooner or later, but not us. We just need to be there afterwards." The security guard said with a sad face, "What about the hotline? Why don't you just unplug the phone line? If someone calls you tomorrow, just say it's broken. Do you need me to teach you how to do things?" Chen Kangan said unhappily. The security guard quickly said yes. At this time, there was another faint rumbling explosion in the city. Chen Kangan looked up and saw flames rising behind the silhouettes of the distant buildings. Damn it, Lei Qi is really serious. This will make me unable to write my report tomorrow. After thinking for a long time, Chen Kangan found that he, a small director of the local security bureau, really couldn't do anything to Huashan. **** in front of Jude Building. The Huashan gang member had just finished yelling, and the driver in the modified RV cab smiled, and suddenly turned on the headlights. The bright light made the gang member's eyes white, and he couldn't see anything. He was about to say something, but suddenly his neck felt cold, and then he had difficulty breathing. He covered his neck, and stepped back 2 steps, and fell to the ground with a plop, and finally fell to the ground. Only then did he see that a series of figures passed by him, and there was a flash of fire in the night sky, and then the gang member who was on guard in the restaurant screamed and fell down, and fell beside him. Finally, a huge figure reflecting the light, flowing with a cold metallic luster, but all vermilion passed by. That figure was actually a small mecha, and 2 lights lit up on its devil-like visor. Then the mecha jumped to the 2nd floor, and crashed into the restaurant. That was the last scene that the gang member lying on the ground saw. In the restaurant, Lei Qi, who was watching a play, suddenly heard voices and gunshots outside. He was stunned, and was about to call someone to ask. Suddenly, a row of windows and walls of the restaurant were smashed by a huge figure, and the window glass and gravel sprayed in, and hit the audience in the back row. Most of these audiences were Lei Qi's friends. He invited them to watch the play tonight. Who would have thought that someone would be so bold as to break into the restaurant and fight? They screamed and scattered. Lei Qi's face became even gloomier. Originally, tonight, the restaurant was listening to music and watching plays, and the city was killing and setting fires. This was to put on a real big show for outsiders to see, to show the strength of Huashan. But now, someone came to his door and slapped him in the face. Lei Qi was used to the storms, and was not panicked at all. He watched a dark figure walk out of the thick smoke calmly. Just as he was about to say a few polite words, something suddenly popped out of the thick smoke and rolled to his feet. Then the smoke became thicker and Leiki felt a burning sensation in his eyes and nose. Tears and snot flowed uncontrollably. It was a tear gas bomb. He had no time to think about which despicable villain used such a mean method. He saw another strong light flash in the thick smoke, and suddenly his eyes turned white, and he could not see anything. Flash bomb. At this time, Leiki didn't even have the time to curse. He immediately lay on the ground, covered his mouth and nose with a handkerchief, and crawled towards the exit with his memory. At this time, he heard a dull gunshot. Da-da-da-da-da. A volley of bullets swept towards him close to the ground, and the wooden floor was lifted up by the bullets. When it was about to hit Leiki, it seemed to hit an invisible barrier, and could not move forward. Empty wall. This was the only mysterious technique Leiki had mastered. He had formed a seal, and released it when he lay on the ground, in order to prevent the current situation. But before he could be happy, he heard a dull sound of breaking air in the air, followed by a shock wave of shattering the empty wall. Leiki thought to himself that it was not good, and then he felt a strong airflow coming, and naturally flashed through his mind the image of someone kicking him. He, the boss of the flower shirt, was not a decoration. He was firmly ranked first in the gang at the intermediate second level. It was just that this first person had not fought with anyone for a long time, let alone a life and death fight, otherwise his body would not have become bloated. Now Leiki could only instinctively stimulate his yuan li, and a black bear phantom vaguely condensed around him. Then Leiki was kicked and flew out. His fat body trembled, and the pain in his foot was so severe that he wanted to die. He wondered how this kick could be so heavy that his heart, liver, spleen, lungs and kidneys almost jumped out of his mouth. Leiki didn't know what he had hit. He only knew that he was dizzy and blood was flowing out of the corner of his mouth uncontrollably. At this time, his eyes could see slightly, but he saw a strong light appear in the thick smoke of the restaurant, which stimulated his eyes and made him unable to open them again. He reached out his hand in panic to make a seal, but suddenly his right hand was burned, and then a sharp pain came. Leiki screamed, not knowing that his right hand was shot, and the whole palm was almost blown to pieces. This time, the empty wall could not be released. He hurriedly shouted, "Who is it? Let's talk. What do you want?" Before the voice fell, Leiki's forehead suddenly burst into pieces, and then a small piece of skull and a head of hair combed back were lifted up. He opened his eyes wide, unable to see anything, and died suddenly. The restaurant was in chaos. Leiki's two women huddled in a corner, trembling, watching the gradually dissipating smoke, and a vermilion mecha stood on the stage like a demon. The mecha raised its arm, a gun barrel emerged from the wrist armor, and a wisp of green smoke rose from the muzzle. On the stage, Leiki lay on the ground on his side, his eyes wide open, his right hand bloody, his forehead and the entire scalp were opened, revealing a bloody head. Seeing this scene, the two women couldn't help but scream. Asterisk 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 Cheoman Street, Wooming Lane. The Bar Red House has been burned to ruins. Jiuying was about to go back when his cell phone suddenly rang. He answered the call for 2 seconds and suddenly changed color. What? The backbone aging next to him was stunned. What's wrong, Uncle Jiuying? Jiuying put down the phone and stared at it for a few seconds in disbelief, and then said, Jude building was attacked, and Ki is dead. Jing took 2 steps back. This is impossible. Who the hell is so bold? Dare to kill Ki in Jude building? Jiuying looked bitter, raised his hand, and pointed to the red house that had become a ruin. Jing's breathing slowed down for a moment, and then he slowly uttered 2 words, Red Ghost. To be exact, it was the Red Ghost who teamed up with the Iron Horse gang and raided Jude building while we were working in the city. Now, the Red Ghost wants to see me and Yang Heo. Chapter 300. Do you have any opinion, Uncle Jiuying? What should we do now? The skinny aging looked at the old man and the gang in front of him. Jiuying rubbed his thin face. Go, call the local security bureau and tell them that there was a murder in Jude building. Let the power of the underground city intervene and see if we can save our flower shirt. Jing glanced at him. What if we can't save him? Then he shook his head. He knew the answer. Jiuying left with a gloomy face. Jing took out his mobile phone and called the residence hotline, but the line was busy. He could only pull one of his men over. You go to the local security bureau immediately. Go quickly. Jude building. When Jiuying came here, he saw that the door of the restaurant was blocked by a RV converted from a truck. A huge gap was knocked out by something on the second floor. 2 rows of figures stood on the wooden corridor, holding weapons in their hands, looking at the people below expressionlessly. There were more than a dozen bodies of men in flowery shirts lying on the ground. Some of them fell to death, some were stabbed to death, and some were shot in the head by sniper rifles. Now the restaurant is surrounded by Huashan gang members. Hundreds of gang members have surrounded Jude building and blocked the street where the restaurant is located. Wow, what a big scene. I haven't seen such a lively scene in many years. It's a pity that they are all useless. They look good but are useless. A young voice sounded, but the tone was particularly arrogant. The crowd parted, and a group of men in black suits walked in. They all had guns in their hands, and some even carried rocket launchers. The man walking in front had a baby face and bit a toothpick, looking cynical. Corpse dog, Yang Heo. Jiuying snorted. Yang, you are still crazy at this time. Did you know that Master Qi was killed? Yang Heo spit out the toothpick in his mouth. People will die eventually. Master Qi is not a god. He will die if he wants to. Anyway, he has enjoyed what he deserves these years. It is not unfair for him to die. Haha. What did you say? Yang, do you still have Master Qi in your eyes? Apologize to Master Qi. Next to Jiuying, the backbones in flowery clothes pointed at Yang Heo and yelled. Yang Heo smiled, took a rifle from his subordinate next to him, and fired a volley of bullets at the feet of those people, making everyone retreat, except Jiuying. Yang Heo said with a wry smile, Uncle Jiuying, you are still experienced, unlike these losers who were scared to death by a few bullets. With your little courage, you still want to say that I'm wrong? Useless. After a good scolding, no one said a word. Jiuying tried to smooth things over. Okay, don't let the people outside laugh at you. Then he raised his head, looked into the building and shouted, Huashan Jiuying. Yang Heo and I are here. Just tell me what's going on. Someone in the building cleared his throat, followed by a burst of laughter, and a man with a Taoist bun came out. My 2 lords, our master wants to see you. Yang Heo raised his head and said with a smile, then why don't you move the car out of the way? It's blocking the gate. How can we get in? The man with the Taoist bun had a smile on his face. Look at what Master Yang said. This little thing can't be a problem for you 2 lords. Please. Yang Heo laughed and looked at Jiuying. How about you, Uncle Jiuying? Please go first. Jiuying knew that he was afraid of an ambush inside and snorted. Do you know the hierarchy now? What are you talking about? I have always respected you, Uncle Jiuying. Yang Heo said with a smile. Jiuying closed his eyes, exerted his strength suddenly, and jumped onto the roof of the RV with a few steps. Then he stepped hard and came to the wooden fence on the second floor of the restaurant and stood in the corridor. Yang Heo whistled, clapped his hands, and then put his hands in his trouser pockets and imitated Jiuying to jump onto the second floor of the restaurant. The man with a Taoist bun led the way and led the 2 people into the restaurant. The hall in front of the stage on the second floor was a mess, with tables and chairs falling to the ground and fruits scattered everywhere. As soon as Jiuying came in, he saw Lei Qi's 2 women huddled in the corner, crying so hard that their makeup was smudged. There was also a small mecha standing on the stage that was nearly 4 meters long. The mecha was vermilion all over, and the mask was hideous like an evil ghost. Lei Qi's body was lying next to the mecha, and the blood had dyed the floor of the stage black and red. There was a man sitting at the edge of the stage. His black hair was slightly messy, and his red eyes were filled with murderous intent. A knife wrapped in rhinoceros skin was casually placed at his feet, and another knife was placed horizontally on his legs. Although he was mentally prepared, Jiuying still took a breath of cold air when he saw this man. Yang Heo, who was walking behind, asked softly, is this the red ghost you mentioned? Jiuying nodded slightly and then saw a man standing on each side of the stage. One was his old acquaintance, Guan from Iron Horse. The other man was a stranger with one arm and a long knife in his hand, but standing there, he gave people the feeling that he was not easy to mess with. Jiuying had a headache. This one-armed man and Guan alone could suppress himself and Yang Heo. In addition, the Taoist bun was not easy to mess with. The most difficult person to mess with was naturally the young man named Red Ghost sitting on the stage. Jiuying couldn't help but frown. Why didn't the people who guarded the bureau come yet? At this time, the young man on the stage spoke. Lei Qi is dead. From now on, Hua Shan will follow me. These two simple sentences determined Hua Shan's future path. Yang Hao and Shan Ying were both stunned, a little uncomfortable with Kai Jiuying's straightforwardness. Then the baby-faced man laughed. Do you think you are playing house? If Qi is dead, Hua Shan will be yours? You have to ask the opinions of Hua Shan's hundreds of brothers. Just then, he saw the figure on the stage move. Like a dragonfly touching the water, it suddenly moved in front of him without any signs. Then the knife light was like a hidden dragon emerging from a stream, breaking out of the sheath, with a clang, outlining a large arc in the half space of the dim restaurant hall, following a natural trajectory, and slashing towards Yang Hao. In an instant, Yang Hao's eyes widened, and he saw the Yuan Li turned into an overturned angry sea with the knife light. The angry tide overturned, and went 1,000 miles away. Along with the sharp arc of the knife, the overwhelming pressure made Yang Hao unable to say a word. He could only roar and slide out a pair of crutches from his sleeves to cross them to defend against the enemy. Clang. When the knife and the stick collided, the harsh sound was heard clearly even by people outside the building. Jiuying, who was closest to Yang Hao in the building, almost thought that a grenade exploded beside him. Whether it was the loud sound of the collision or the sudden burst of light, it was so loud and dazzling. Then he saw Yang Hao, who had always been outspoken, half kneeling on the ground, with two crutches broken into 4 pieces, and one arm broken at the shoulder, lying in a pool of blood. However, the long knife that cut off Yang Hao's arm was not stained with blood. Yang Hao's expression was distorted, and the pair of red eyes of the Red Ghost that seemed to be surging with blood were close in front of him. Yang Hao, who had always been known for his madness, was now quiet and even deliberately suppressed his breathing. He was afraid of disturbing the killing god in front of him. Looking at the man nicknamed Corpse Dog, Luo Yan asked softly, "Do you have any other opinions?" Chapter 301 Only the Red Gate. Outside the restaurant, hundreds of people from Huashan were looking forward to it. A moment later, they saw Jiuying come out, followed by Yang Hao, who was in a state of disarray, with one arm missing. Standing on the second floor, Jiuying looked down at the gang members below with a bitter face. Finally, he coughed and announced, "From tonight, there will be no more Huashan, only hangmen." Everyone in the Huashan gang was stunned, and then many people had a trace of loneliness in their eyes. They probably guessed what happened. An era has finally passed. Next, under the orders of Jiuying and Yang Hao, the gang members of the former Huashan, now renamed hangmen, left cleanly. According to the previous agreement between the two parties, Lei Qi's body was taken away by Jiuying and buried in a low-key manner. Luo Yan originally intended to dismiss Lei Qi's 2 women, but the 2 young beauties begged Luo Yan to take them in with snot and tears. He said that the 2 of them had followed Lei Qi for a long time, and now that Lei Qi was gone, the 2 of them would have no one to rely on, and they would inevitably be retaliated against, or dragged into the flesh trade. Wen Zhao also said that Captain Chigi must have 2 women around him to be decent, and that any big boss must have 1 or 2 women around him to support the scene. In the end, Luo Yan asked the fake Taoist priest to find a way to settle himself, and he patted his butt and left. Back in the academy, Luo Yan took out the mobile phone of Black Witch and updated the content of the next 2 tasks. Soon, the recruitment task received a notification, and Black Witch said that someone would come to inspect the quality of the team in the near future. If it is qualified, Team 7 can take on the team task next. This boiling night finally came to an end. 2 figures came into a dog meat restaurant in Xifengtang. A man with yellow teeth said, "Give us a pot, quickly. We just finished watching a big show and are hungry." After the 2 sat down, the man with yellow teeth shook his head. "It's incredible, really incredible. You said that the captain of Team 7 is just a kid. He has only been in Guangling for a few days, but he has already dealt with the local gang and annexed the other party's forces. With this speed, the woman in Team 1 would feel inferior." Another man with thick eyebrows and big eyes took out a cigarette and bit it on his lip and said with a smile, "Then should we still get involved in the affairs of Team 7? The man with big yellow teeth smiled. "Brother, you are not the first day in the gang. Don't you know what's going on? What the hell am I getting involved in? I almost got dragged into the ditch by LIU. Didn't you see it just now? Could you block the knife that the kid chopped in the restaurant? Anyway, I couldn't do anything for the things here. Just find an excuse for LIU to prevaricate. If he wants to deal with others, let him do it himself." The thick-browed man exhaled a cigarette and said, "I think he's in trouble now. The man surnamed LIU invested all his fortune in that base. Now the base is gone. He has lost so much that he has to pawn his underwear. He can't care about so much for a while." Big Yellow Teeth smiled and said, "That's it. Let's finish this pot of dog meat and get out of here." Soon, the dog meat was served, accompanied by 2 bottles of wine. The two of them ate happily. ***** Forbidden Land Number 3, Misty Canyon. Safe Zone. A team of gold diggers walked hurriedly. They were wearing all kinds of clothes and equipment. One of them even wore a broken helmet with an electronic board visible. The personnel composition of the gold digger team is very complicated, but a guide is indispensable. A good guide can increase the team's survival rate by 30%. Chen Ran considered himself a good guide. He has been leading people in the forbidden area for more than a year. Don't underestimate this year. If you can walk in the forbidden area for a year without dying, you can be called a gold medal guide and a senior guide. So Chen Ran has a characteristic: he is very expensive. In addition to the considerable commission, if he successfully leads the team back to the base, he will also get 5% of the team's gains. But there is a reason for his high price. In the past year, Chen Ran has never failed. "Stop here for a while." Chen Ran raised his hand and looked around. This is an abandoned observation post. Although it is in ruins and covered with vines, as one of the few safe places, Chen Ran usually takes the team to rest here. After recovering their strength, everyone will set off again. The rest of the journey will be much safer. Zuo Long, the captain of the gold diggers team, relied on his experience to point out 2 or 3 commanding heights and then dispersed the firepower of the team. A little girl was about to make a fire and cook. Just as she was ready, Chen Ran kicked her things away. "Are you risking your life? Are you afraid that the giant beasts or parasites don't know we are here? Also, don't say I didn't tell you. In addition to giant beasts and parasites, the mutated beasts or plants in the forbidden area are also quite troublesome. Be smart." The little girl pouted, not daring to refute. She took out the compressed biscuits and ate them with boiled water. Captain Zuo Long laughed. "Guide, how long will it take to get back to the base?" Chen Ran looked at the sky. "We will be back before dusk, as long as nothing unexpected happens." As he said, he looked around. The trees here were twisted like evil spirits, the mud was rotten, and the branches and leaves were everywhere. It looked the same as usual, but Chen Ran always felt scared, so he said, 10 minutes, we will set off in 10 minutes. Only 10 minutes? We have been walking all morning, and these 2 legs seem to be useless. Can't we rest more? The team members complained one after another. Zuo Long wiped his sweat and said, "Yeah, everyone is tired. Let's rest for 20 minutes. No, 15 minutes should be no problem. We didn't even see a ghost today." Chen Ran frowned, and seeing that everyone was tired, he could only nod. 15 minutes, no more. After that, he also found a clean place to sit down, took a sip of water in his mouth to moisten his mouth. At this moment, on a commanding height, a man holding a sniper rifle shouted, "Captain, there is a situation at 3 o'clock. Chen Ran shuddered and jumped up quickly. Just as he was about to climb to the commanding height, he saw something white floating down in front of him. He was stunned for a moment, raised his head, and saw snowflakes one after another floating down from the sky above the forbidden area. "It's snowing?" The little girl eating compressed biscuits raised her head and reached out to catch a snowflake. "Hurry up." Chen Ran seemed to have thought of something and shouted, "Hurry up, it's Beyu. The upper level giant beast Beyu." He didn't pack up his things and rushed out of the camp. Before the others could react, they heard a quack sound. Then the sky became dark, and people looked up and saw a huge shadow passing over their heads. The shadow was so huge that they couldn't see the whole picture. They only saw that the thing had lumps of flesh one after another, and those lumps of flesh were all embedded with a face. A human face. Men, women, young and old, hundreds and thousands. Chapter 302. White rainers coming. Screams, gunshots, explosions. All kinds of sounds sounded behind Chen Ran. Chen Ran didn't care and ran away quickly. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. There was a scream in the air, and the girls who had just made the fire fell down and hit a hard stone. A hole suddenly appeared in their heads. Chen Ran didn't dare to look at it. Turning around, in front of him, limbs, broken bones, organs, heads, and things from the human body kept falling down. They fell on the grass, in the mud, and on the rocks. Chen Ran looked back and saw the Captain Zuolong standing on a high ground, holding 2 machine guns, his body covered in blood, roaring angrily and firing at the snakes circling around him. Soon his figure was blocked by the grey and white snakes. Chen Ran shouted and rushed into a forest, his chest heaving, and it seemed that there was a ball of fire burning in his lungs. From the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of something passing through the woods on his left. Chen Ran didn't dare to look. He only glimpsed a grey shadow, like a train, but much bigger than a train. When the grey shadow suddenly accelerated, the trees in front flew up into the air one by one and fell down again. Suddenly, the grey shadow rushed out sideways and appeared in front of Chen Ran. But Chen Ran could see clearly that the grey shadow was not tightly connected to the ground, and there was at least a meter of distance. Chen Ran shouted, and instead of slowing down, he ran faster. When he was about to hit the grey shadow, he used a sliding shovel to slide through the cold and smooth grass and slide under the grey shadow. Success. Chen Ran was delighted. Suddenly, his eyes went dark again. Just in front of him, a deep mouth opened, and Chen Ran could see the thick, mucus-filled cavity wall in the mouth, as well as a huge, frog-like tongue. He slid into the mouth like a mosquito. The big mouth closed. Asterisk 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 Langquan base. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Jiuying, the head of the law enforcement department, walked into his office. The work of the law enforcement department has always been leisurely, except for the fact that the Heitao company caused public outrage several months ago. The base has been calm in the past few months, and there is nothing for Jiuying to worry about. Originally, he thought that it would not be long before the Heitao company would come back to settle accounts with those pharmaceutical companies. Speaking of which, Jiuying was reluctant to leave the Heitao company. After the company left, his wallet also shrank a lot. As a result, several months passed, and the Heitao company seemed to have forgotten about this matter. It did not come back to cause trouble, nor did it retake the Medicine Valley. Not long ago, there were business travelers who had just come from Jiuying. From their mouths, Jiuying learned that the Heitao company was finished. In addition, Jiuying city suffered a huge change, and the city was almost gone. At this point, Jiuying no longer worried about his inability to move into the underground city. Jiuying, have you seen my Walkman? Isn't it in your drawer? Is it there? It really is. Jiuying put on his Walkman. This thing is out of print, even if you have money. It contains some peaking opera clips and crosstalk that Jiuying likes. He has listened to them for many years. He listens to them every afternoon. It has become a habit. Just like now, he sits on the rattan chair, puts on his headphones, and starts humming. I don't know how long it has been, but Jiuying was suddenly shaken by his assistant. He shouted, "What's the matter?" Seeing Jiuying open his mouth, but can't hear any sound, he remembered that he was listening to music, so he took off his headphones and asked again, "What's the matter?" But Jiuying didn't need Jiuying to answer, because he knew it, because he was not deaf. So he could hear the behemoth alarm that was ringing wildly in the base. Alarm. Alarm. The behemoth signal has been detected approaching the base. Please go to the shelter immediately. Notify again. Jiuying was a little confused. Giant beast. It has been many years since a giant beast approached the base. He even suspected that he had made a mistake. Looking to the side of the window, Jiuying saw that the street was in chaos. What kind of people were the residents in the base? They were definitely not the obedient little sheep in the underground city. Anyone who dared to come to the Forbidden Land to make a living would have his head tied to his waist. Now that he heard that the giant beast was coming to the base, do you expect them to obey and go to the shelter? Question mark. That would be, unless the sun rises from the west. Jiuying didn't need to look to know that everyone was rushing to leave the base, and the base would not stop them. The focus of the base must be on the giant beast now. It shouldn't be a difficult giant beast. It may have run out of the safe zone, which is basically low-level giant beasts. Although he said so, Jiuying still left the office. Even if it was a low-level one, it was not something that someone like him without a mecha could fight. If he was trampled to death, it would be too unfair. Jiuying hurried to the special shelter for the upper levels of the base. On the way, he saw a number of mechs heading to the warning area outside the base, ready to fight the giant beast. The base's high-level shelter was renovated from an underground shopping mall. Although it is not as good as a dungeon, it also has 3 layers of defensive armor. Jiuying walked out of the elevator and entered a hall. He saw that the supervisors and department managers of the base were basically there. What kind of monster is it? Have you figured it out? Jiuying said. At this time, the screen in the hall lit up, and a projector projected the scene outside the base on the screen. In the picture, snow was falling one after another. Jiuying was stunned. It's snowing? It's not snowing yet. Then, the trees in the forbidden area fell down, and dust and smoke rolled. Then, cars rushed out of the forest. People in those cars carried rifles and fired into the forest. Some people even picked up rocket launchers and fired into the woods. A moment later, suddenly a group of trees flew out of the forest and hit the convoy like rain. If they were hit by a car, the car would overturn at the least, and the car and the people would be smashed into meat patties at the worst. Then a grey shadow rushed out of the forest. On the screen, Jiuying could see clearly that it was a toad. But soon he saw clearly that the thing only had a head like a toad, but its body was like a snake. The long snake had lumps of flesh one after another, and faces were embedded on those things. Jiuying exclaimed, "A high-level beast, Bayu." Someone shouted, "No, this looks a little different from Bayu. When did that thing start to grow human faces?" This is not the most important problem. The problem is, isn't Bayu in the danger zone? How did he run out of the forbidden area? Questions were raised one after another, until someone asked a question. Can the mechs in our base defeat Bayu? The hall was quiet for a while, and Jiuying shouted in panic, "Quick, contact Guangling City. Quick." Chapter 303 Jiuying. Guangling City. In the classroom, Jiuying lay on the table. He went to Xing again last night, and spent the night there. He came back a little late, and only slept for 2 or 3 hours. He is a little sleepy now. But in general Jiuying Team 7 has temporarily gained a foothold in Guangling City. He originally wanted to deal with Huishan, but the night before yesterday, Lei Qi gave Jiuying an opportunity. While the manpower of Huishan was scattered, and they were attacking 2 places where the personnel had already moved, Jiuying took the personnel of the original Team 7, plus more than 20 people from Iron Horse, and forcefully attacked Jude Building, killed Lei Qi, and seized the Huishan organization. Now, Huishan has been renamed Red Gate. The word red echoes Red House and Red Ghost, and also symbolizes fire, giving it the meaning of prosperity. This is what Wenzhou thought. Jiuying took 3 seconds to think, and then clapped his hands. He doesn't care much about what his power is called. Just like the name of a dish is not important, what is important is the taste. Iron must be hard itself. The names of gangs are so tacky. If you are strong enough, you will be praised to the sky. On the contrary, if you are weak, no matter how cool your name is, people will not buy it. The owner of the Red Gate is Jiuying, also known as the Red Ghost. It is divided into 3 gates, inner, and outer. The inner gate is the management, composed of Jiuying, Wenzhou, Wei Junai, Shannying and Yang Heo. The inner gate is responsible for the organizational affairs inside the dungeon, which is jointly managed by Wenzhou and Shannying. The outer gate is responsible for the affairs outside the city, including the management of the Forbidden Land trading and other livelihoods, which is managed by Wei Junai and Yang Heo. Jiuying wants to imitate Team 1, and also set up a ring or something to absorb new blood. Let Wenzhou figure out a way to do this. Once it is done, he can look for strong newcomers like Yukioshu and replace the Iron Horse little by little, so as to directly control a main force directly under his control. At this time, Luo Yan heard a sound of footsteps, and then Xiaoshi's voice sounded. "Everyone, please be quiet." Luo Yan raised his head and saw Xiaoshi walking up to the podium. He said with a smile on his face, "Today, there is a special teacher coming to give you a lecture. Welcome everyone." Clap, clap. Applause broke out in the classroom. Then Xiaoshi moved to the side and said to the door, "Drive Jiuying, please come in." Luo Yan was stunned. The one who came was Lin Wen's teacher, Dr. Jiuying, who studied Giksu. After more than half a year of study, even people like Luo Yan who don't pay much attention to cultural subjects know that the name Jiuying has almost run through their entire student life. In recent years, all the objects, theories, and knowledge of great value found in Giksu can be labeled with Jiuying. And more than a month ago, Jiuying came to Guangling. I don't know what he is studying, but he has stayed until now. It is indeed a bit surprising that he is still here to give you lecture today. Hearing that it was Jiuying, the applause in the classroom became louder, and in this thunderous applause, a figure walked in. She was a young woman in her 20s, wearing a white low-cut cheongsam with a teardrop-shaped neckline that was beautiful and dignified. She was much younger than expected, with black hair tied up in a bun, and her pupils were a rare dark grey. Her eyes were as cold and indifferent as Lin Wei's. It seemed that no one or anything in this world could arouse her interest. That kind of coldness was not pretended, but ingrained in her bones, and was revealed through her eyes. "Hello everyone, I'm Jiuying," the cheongsam woman said lightly. Her grey eyes swept across the entire classroom, and even Luo Yan couldn't make her stop for a moment. "What's the matter?" She looks at me, as if I'm looking at garbage. Although, I really want to be stepped on by her. "Aren't you too perverted?" Whispers rose and fell in the classroom. Xiaoshi coughed awkwardly. Silence. Then he forced a smile and looked at the cheongsam woman. "Drive Jiuying, then this class is handed over to you." Jiuying nodded, then said coldly, "I didn't prepare the lesson, and I don't know if your knowledge reserves can keep up with my pace. In order to prevent you from not understanding what I'm saying, let's do this. You ask questions and I will answer them. I will try my best to make it easy to understand and take into account your knowledge level." This is naked contempt, but considering her achievements in the study of Giksu, it is not excessive to say these words. The class fell silent, and no one asked questions for a while. Luo Yan thought for a while, raised his hand and said, "Drive Jiuying. The forbidden area is caused by the appearance and wandering of the overlord level beasts, so will the forbidden area disappear? Or will the forbidden area become a more dangerous area?" Jiuying stretched out her hand to make a downward gesture, and after Luo Yan put down his hand, she answered with a slightly cold tone. "Once the Overlord class Behemoths leave, and no new Overlord class Behemoths move in, the forbidden area will slowly disappear. The ecology of the forbidden area will also change accordingly. But if the Overlord class Behemoths in the forbidden area evolve to a higher level, for example, becoming nightmare level or even a higher level of life, yes, the forbidden area will become more dangerous. It will become a GD or even a forbidden area." A light cry was heard in the classroom. "The forbidden area will become a GD or even a forbidden domain." Luo Yan suddenly remembered a word that Xing had mentioned before, so he raised his hand again and said, "Drive Jiuying. What is a GD battlefield?" Jiuying blinked his grey eyes slightly, and then said, "Although there is also the word GD, there is still a difference between GD battlefield and GD. GD usually refers to the presence of behemoths above the nightmare level. Therefore, the area where it is located is far more dangerous than the forbidden area. In order to distinguish it from the forbidden area, we give it a definition. But unlike the forbidden domain, the difference between the GD and the forbidden area in terms of environment is not particularly large. At most, there will be some changes in the core area. As for the GD battlefield, it is also called the desperate battlefield. It is usually formed by the bordering of two or more Jedis. But the changes brought about by the bordering of two Jedis are not as simple as 1+1. From the quality of the behemoths, the changes in the ecology to various other aspects, there will be earth-shaking changes. If nothing is changed or intervened, it will continue to expand, engulf the surrounding areas, and bring disaster to mankind. So once a GD battlefield is formed, we must intervene immediately, and a lot of manpower and material resources must be invested. Even so, some GD battlefields cannot be destroyed at all, and can only be restricted. It brings infinite despair to mankind. Being in it is like being in a desperate situation, so it is also called a desperate battlefield. Currently, there are 5 such battlefields in the world. Even now, after the end of the giant scourge, there are still battles going on in those 5 battlefields all the time. On our land, there is a desperate battlefield, and a lot of manpower and material resources are invested every year to limit its expansion. Some of you may be able to enter the desperate battlefield one day. That is an honor, but also a sorrow. Chapter 304, Twists and Turns. Glory is also sorrow. Luo Yan's eyes were blank, and he didn't quite understand. At this time, Bei, who was sitting next to him, raised his hand and asked, "Doctor, I once heard from my teacher that there is more than one kind of power in this world." Jiuying, who had black hair and grey eyes and a cold look, nodded. "That's right. Yuanli is the energy that we humans can absorb, but in addition to Yuanli, there are 2 kinds of energy, Gang and Sha. Gang is the power of extreme Yang. Sha is the power of extreme Yin. Neither of these 2 can be used by us humans. They only exist in the texts and records of Gixu, and have not been discovered yet. But I have a guess that everything in Yanfu is Yin Sha. In addition, if Yang Gang, Yin Sha and Yuanli can merge, they will form a more powerful energy. Key. From some of the unearthed objects in Gixu, we have obtained some information that Ki is the origin of all things and the power of the beginning. Yang Gang, Yin Sha, Ki. It turns out that the world is so vast. In addition to Yuanli, there are so many higher level powers in the world. Even Ki is actually the primordial power. Luo Yang couldn't imagine what kind of power that would be. In the classroom, other students were also fascinated by what they heard. Now, just Yuanli is enough for them to study for a lifetime. But there is actually a higher level power. I don't know what kind of existence can use and cultivate that energy. After a while, Li Bohan raised his hand and asked, "Doctor, with the current ability of mankind, is there a chance to close the Yama space?" This is another question that everyone cares about. After all, as long as the Yambu space is not closed for one day, even if all the giant beasts on the ground are eliminated, there will still be giant beasts thrown in from the Yambu space. Faced with this question, Jiuying did not give a positive answer, but shook his head, "Not sure. This is not my research topic. But I think that the Yambu space will not open for no reason. As long as the cause is found and reverse research is conducted, there should be a way to close the Yambu space." One question after another was thrown out. Some were answered, while others were left unanswered. Today's time passed exceptionally quickly, and in a blink of an eye, it was time to end the get out of class. Jiuying left. Although they didn't spend much time together, this female doctor left a deep impression on everyone. When he went to the cafeteria at noon, Luo Yan received a message. Tonight, the people from the Black Witch organization who came to inspect the quality of the team would arrive. Luo Yan had already agreed on a meeting time in advance, so he sent a message to Wenzhou, asking him to go to Zijiu and ask the people from the Iron Horse to gather in the evening. At this time, a news report was inserted into the TV in the cafeteria. Just this morning, the re-investigation of the giant parasite smuggling case initiated by Kaiming Heavy Industry some time ago was approved by the City Lord's office today. And according to relevant regulations, the City Lord election activities are suspended, and everything will be restarted after the investigation is completed. Suddenly, many students gathered in front of the TV. Some even started eating in front of the TV with their meals in hand. If you ask me, this Luo guy is really capable. I thought the matter was settled, but he, who is at the bottom of the list, actually did this. That's great. If he clears it, maybe there will be some compensation plan. How to compensate? You can't just give him votes, right? No need to say it. I feel sorry for my Commander D. Choosing a city lord is full of twists and turns. What twists and turns are you talking about? Get lost. The students chirped like sparrows watching the fun on the branches. Luo Yan glanced at the TV and walked to the food window. His phone vibrated. He picked it up and saw that he had received a message from the core. Langquan base was attacked by a giant beast. Colonel Liang Jian led the team to support. The pilots and reserve forces of other classes should be ready to attack at any time. Student Luo. A familiar voice sounded. Luo Yan looked back. It was Liu Ruohan. Yang Lixi next to him was waving his hand to greet him. Did you receive the message from the core? Liu Ruohan walked over and glanced at Bei, who was standing not far from Luo Yan and wearing a long-eared rabbit hat. Luo Yan nodded. Bei took out his cell phone. I received it too. Yang Lixi came over and said, what message? But no one answered him. He looked aggrieved. Finally, he heard a general idea from the conversation of the three people. Langquan base was attacked by a giant beast. I said, something must have happened in the forbidden area. My medicine valley was also attacked more than a month ago. Yang Lixi said with a worried look, classmate Liu, don't you need to go out? Liu Ruohan shook her head. For the time being, just let us stand by and be prepared. Yang Lixi nodded. That's good. I think this matter is not simple, and I won't get involved if I can. If you get hurt, I will feel bad. Liu Ruohan walked away with a headache. Yang Lixi winked at Luo Yan and chased after him like a dogskin plaster that couldn't be shaken off. At night, Luo Yan came to Xifengtang. He put on the mask prepared by Wenzhao. Green face and fangs, bulging eyes, and raised eyebrows. This is a traditional wood-carved Nuo mask. It was still due to Lao. The hole that was hit by a small meteor a few days ago was patched up. The restaurant is currently operating normally, but Lei Qi died here not long ago, so there are not many customers. Luo Yan came to the second floor. The stage on the second floor was dismantled, and two women were performing. One played the guzheng and the other sang ancient music, which had a bit of the charm of clear springs and flowing water. They were the two women of Lei Qi. Wenzhao saw that they had some talents and were pretty, so he simply arranged for them to sing in the restaurant and make a living on their own. There were not many people listening to the music on the second floor today, only a few. When Luo Yan arrived, Wenzhao walked out of the dark and led him to a quiet room at the back. When he entered the quiet room, Luo Yan saw two women in white suits with their hair tied up high in ponytails. The eyes under the Nuomu mask twitched slightly, and then Luo Yan saw the woman who was as bright and lofty as autumn water. Yushu, why are you here? Just as Luo Yan finished speaking, he heard someone laugh lightly. Captain Yu, the person you recommended, doesn't seem to respect you very much. Such provocative words made Luo Yan's eyes cold, and he looked over and landed on a handsome man. He wore gold-rimmed glasses, had a fair face, and was gentle and refined. He was like a college student who had just graduated from campus. Yushu smiled and said, let me introduce you. This is Captain Liu Zhao of Team 3. This time, the work of inspecting the quality of your team will be completed by Captain Liu and me. Team 3, Liu Zhao. Luo Yan said "Oh" in the mask, and then said, Liu Zhao? He looked at Wenzhao next to him. Is he the one who hacked our mecha? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 305. What if I threaten you? In the quiet room, the atmosphere suddenly stagnated, as if someone had filled it with cement, and it seemed stiff and suffocating. Wenzhao's forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat. He was always eloquent, and he looked at his nominal boss, Chigi, and his real boss Yukiyashu behind the scenes. His eyes wandered between the two, and he implicitly sent a look of help, but the former's face was hidden behind the Nuo wood mask, and it was unknown what expression he had, and the latter seemed to have suddenly found that his 10 fingers were so beautiful that they kept looking at them, but no one responded, or gave him a look. At this moment, Wenzhao hated why he followed in, why he didn't just send Chigi away and leave, why he had to stay. After a long time, he forced a smile and said, Captain Chigi, what do you think? The pressure was back on Luo Yan. At this time, Liu Xiao smiled. Captain Shiggy, if you have something to say, just say it. Zhang Ze's mecha is indeed in my hands, but I didn't steal any property from your Team 7. It's just that Zhang Ze owed me money, and he mortgaged the mecha to me, that's all. Liu Yan stretched out his hand. Where is the evidence? Liu Xiao's expression turned cold. I don't think I need to provide you with any evidence. Zhang Ze's mecha was exchanged for his own contribution points, and it was not allocated by the organization. Even if you took over Team 7, it doesn't mean that the mecha belongs to you. Liu Yan said domineeringly, the organization didn't reclaim it, and Zhang Ze's property belongs to our Team 7. Mecha, isn't it his property? If you can produce evidence, it's fine. If you can't, I advise you to return the mecha to avoid embarrassment to everyone. Liu Xiao laughed. Captain Shiggy, it's true that a new official has 3 fires when he takes office, but you have to understand that I'm not under your control. I got the mecha with my own ability. If you have the ability, you can take it from me. That's what you said. Liu Yan nodded. Don't regret it. Liu Xiao frowned slightly, feeling like he was being set up, which made him feel very unhappy. He snorted. There is no word regret in my dictionary. Yukiishu smiled and said, okay, Captain Liu, let's get down to business. Today, the two of us are here to jointly test the strength of the members of Team 7. Captain Shiggy, let your members come out. Liu Yan looked at Wen Zhao, who understood and went out. A moment later, Guanpeng, Lin Zhu, Zhang Chenang and others walked into the quiet room one after another, and together with old members such as Wei Junai, a total of 29 people appeared in the quiet room. Yukiishu looked around and smiled. All of you should use your full strength to stimulate your energy. Let me see. Guanpeng nodded and winked at Lin Zhu and others. At that moment, everyone burst out their energy without reservation, forming a very strong wave in the quiet room. Okay, let's end the exercise. Yukiishu waved his hand. Wen Zhao wisely asked everyone to leave, including himself. When only Liu Yan and the other two were left in the room, Yukiishu smiled and said, Captain Liu, what do you think? Liu Xiao glanced at Liu Yan and chuckled. A mob. There are only a few who are okay, and the rest are just filling in the numbers. Yukiishu asked slowly, what do you mean? Liu Xiao placed his hand on the rosewood armrest, and his 5 fingers swept regularly, revealing a meaningful smile. I think Captain Shiggy's team still needs to be polished. The organization needs a team that can actually execute orders, not a small team that is just made up of people. Captain Shiggy, spend a little more time on it. Liu Yan said calmly from the mask. In other words, Captain Liu thinks that my team is not up to standard? Liu Xiao smiled. Indeed. Liu Yan raised his head, his eyes cold, and swept across Liu Xiao's face. I wonder how brave the members of Captain Liu's team are. Can you pull them out, so I can see them? Liu Xiao closed his eyes slightly. I don't have the time for that. Without a reference, how can I know what kind of standard is qualified? Or should I say, whether it is qualified or not is decided by Captain Liu. Liu Yang placed the long sword Huan Lung horizontally between his knees. If so, then I have reason to suspect that Captain Liu is deliberately looking for trouble with me. His eyes swept over the scabbard of Huan Lung, and Liu Xiao's face was cold. I'm just talking about the facts. Then pull out the members of Team 3 and let me try the sword. As long as they can take my sword, they will be qualified. If half of the people in a team are qualified, I will admit that Captain Liu is right. Otherwise, Captain Liu is just nitpicking. Liu Yan said slowly. Liu Xiao's face did not change, but a few strange colors flashed in his eyes. Red Ghost is a fierce man who fights against advanced realms with an intermediate realm. Even several good players of the Xuanhu organization were killed by him. Liu Xiao asked himself, there are only 2 people in his team who can take the opponent's sword, but it is far from meeting the requirements of Red Ghost. Liu Xiao stood up and walked towards the gate with a smile. It's your team that needs to be tested now, not mine. Why should I listen to you? Also, let me tell you one more thing. When it comes to team testing, if one person feels unqualified, then he or she is unqualified. So, if you have the time to bother with me, you might as well spend your time on the recruitment mission. But, if I remember correctly, you should have no time, right? Liu Zhao was right. The mission only lasted 3 months. Once it was overdue, it would be considered a failure and Liu Yan's captain qualification would be revoked. Hearing this, Liu Yan did not look at Yushu. The Huanlong longsword was unsheathed. Liu Zhao stopped immediately and turned around. What do you want to do? If you change your mind, I will personally send you out. If you refuse to change, you are a guest from afar, and I will also send you off. In the Nuo mask, the red eyes were cold and reflected the figure of Liu Zhao. Liu Zhao immediately looked at Yushu. The latter was looking at her 10 fingers again. Liu Zhao sneered. Captain Shigi, do you know what you are saying? Are you threatening me? Threatening an inspector? Liu Yan asked back. So what? Liu Zhao suddenly burst out with his yuanli, and a tall figure appeared behind him. The figure was like a demon god, with strange and complex patterns on his body, holding a pair of Zuanhu axes, and the part above the neck, transitioned from blur to nothingness. Do you really think you can keep me? Liu Yan did not respond, but stood up, unsheathed the ring dragon, and walked towards Liu Zhao step by step. Crash. Suddenly, the sound of waves rang out in the quiet room, and then Liu Yan's yuanli spread out like a tide, and the shadows of thousands of mountains rose behind him, and the blue sea was endless in front of him. The waves were surging. Chapter 306 3 Methods. Seeing Liu Yan approaching step by step, Liu Zhao's back was slightly sweaty. He couldn't help but look at Yushu again. The woman winked at him, which meant that he should solve his own problems. Liu Zhao immediately cursed Yushu in his heart. This time he was designated as one of the 2 inspectors by the organization. Liu Zhao was secretly happy. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. As he said before, the organization has a rule that, as long as an inspector thinks that the team is not qualified, the team inspection of Team 7 will not pass. When Liu Zhao came, he had already made up his mind to trip up Team 7 and prevent the Red Ghost from becoming the captain. Although it was obvious that doing so would not give Yushu face, Liu Zhao's strength was greatly reduced after losing a wild horse base. In order to prevent Yushu and Team 7 from joining forces and eventually sweeping the Zuanming branch, he had to risk breaking up with Yushu and interfere to prevent Team 7 from being established. Unexpectedly, Yushu did not show his attitude from beginning to end. In addition, the Red Devil was stronger than he expected. As soon as they met, he demanded to return Zhang Ze's mecha, and now he was threatening him, the inspector, openly. Although Liu Zhao looked calm on the surface, he was very nervous inside. He didn't think he was much stronger than Zhang Ze, but the energy fluctuations displayed by the Red Devil now seemed to be stronger than the rumors. In addition, there was Yushu, whose attitude was unclear. Liu Zhao was in a complicated mood. The worst case scenario now was that Yushu took the opportunity to join forces with the Red Devil to kill him. This was not impossible. As long as he pushed the matter to the Red Devil afterwards, Yushu could stay out of it. Liu Zhao's eyes rolled, and when Liu Yan was only 7 steps away from him, he shouted, "Okay." Liu Yan looked up. Liu Zhao said calmly, "Just now, I just wanted to test the determination of Captain Shigi. Now I know, I believe that Team 7 will be able to flourish in the hands of Captain Shigi. I declare that the combat power of Team 7 is in full compliance with the standards set by the organization. But I don't know what Captain you will say." Yushu laughed and said, "Captain Shigi was recommended by me. Can I still hold him back? Since Captain Liu thinks Team 7 is qualified, then of course I will make it easy for them. Congratulations, Captain Shigi, you have completed an important task." Liu Yan then slowly withdrew his yuanli. Then he raised his voice and said, "Wenzhao, please send Captain Liu outside to listen to music and have good tea." The door opened. Wenzhao, with sweat stains on his forehead, smiled and said to Liu Zhao, "Captain Liu, please come this way." Liu Zhao didn't care whether Shigi personally sent him out at this time. He glanced at Liu Yan wearing a Renuo wood mask and left with a smile. The door of the quiet room was closed. Yushu smiled and said, "I can't interfere with what happened just now. Our branch chief Zuhan is in seclusion, and there has been no news so far. Other branches that are still operating are eyeing us covetously. They all want to find some handle to interfere in our affairs. If my intention is too obvious, I will be caught. I hope you can understand. Liu Yang nodded slightly, but he didn't agree in his heart. Liu Zio's behavior was obviously to cause trouble for Team 7. Even if Yukiyoshi couldn't get out of it herself, what would it matter if she said a few words? But this woman didn't express her opinion until she solved it herself, and then she defended herself like a hindsight. In the booklet in Liu Yan's heart, the name Yukiyoshi was quietly written. Yukiyoshi smiled and continued, as compensation, I will use some of my connections to give you a good team mission next. What do you think about Zhang Ze's mecha? Liu Yan put the knife back into the sheath. Yukiyoshi smiled coquettishly. It is impossible for Liu Zio to have any evidence, and Zhang Ze doesn't owe him any money. That's all I can say. Liu Yan said simply, that's enough. Then he asked, do you want to listen to the song? Yukiyoshi glanced at him tenderly. If it's you singing, I'm very interested in listening. If it's the two women outside, forget it. They can't sing as well as me. Liu Yan glanced at her. Yukiyoshi stood up, walked to Liu Yan, raised her mouth, and said charmingly, why, do you want to hear your sister sing a song? Your mouth is yours, I can't stop you, if you want to sing. Liu Yan replied stiffly. Yukiyoshi laughed, your mouth is not good, you can't speak, and you are not likable. My sister only sings my song for my man. Be my man, Red Ghost. Liu Yan shook his head decisively. You don't understand romance. Yukiyoshi walked towards the main door. Go to the online store later. I suggest you exchange some potions first. For example, Xingyuan potions can speed up your cultivation, and Xianbei potions can ensure that you won't make mistakes when you cultivate. As for the new team mission, I'll give it to you later. Let's go. In a moment, the people in the quiet room left. Liu Yan didn't leave. He logged into the internal network of Blackwitch. After a moment, he saw the ML icon under his account flashing. Congratulations on completing the team mission and recruiting a main force. Your captain authority is officially opened. Your purchase authority is officially opened. You get 500 contribution points. After closing the email, Liu Yan opened them all, clicked on the Gang for section, and entered the keywords red poison and secondary infection in the search bar. The results came out soon. Golden chamber record, a detoxification and healing method for red poison, especially secondary infection, can be practiced by those above the intermediate level. Price: 5,000 contribution points. Remarks: only available to branch heads. Found it. Liu Yan's eyes lit up at first, but when he saw the price and the notes, he poured a bucket of cold water on it. The price is okay. 5,000 contribution points are not a small amount, but as long as the task is completed, there will always be a day to get enough. The biggest problem is the purchasing authority. It actually requires the purchasing authority of the minister level. Liu Yang couldn't help but close his eyes. Now, as far as he knows, there are 3 ways to solve the problem of the red poison in his body. The first method is to practice to the Tangsuan realm before the red poison attacks the heart, and the toxin can be discharged. The second method is to become the head of the Zuanming department before the poison takes effect, and exchange for the golden chamber record for practice. The third method is to help Yukiyoshi become the head of the branch as soon as possible, and then get the golden chamber record from her. Among these 3 methods, the first 2 methods take time, especially the second one. The third method should be the fastest and most effective. The problem is, how can Liu Yan guarantee that when Yukiyoshi sits on the throne of the minister, she will give him the golden chamber record instead of threatening him with it? Even, deal with yourself. Chapter 307, Try moving. A few days later, your bank account was transferred 2,850,000 work points at 9:58, and your account balance is now. Looking at this message, Liu Yang put away his phone. A few days ago, in the Battle of Mustang Base, he seized a sniper rifle and several weapons from Xiao Teng's mecha. Liu Yan sold them to the core as a package, and now the work points have finally arrived. At this time, the phone received another message. Assembly information. Liu Yan closed his eyes slightly. Guangling Corps headquarters. Liu Yan and Bei walked into the team lounge together. Captain Yan Wenbo looked pale, with dark circles around his eyes, and raised his head and said, Zio Luo and Zio Bei are here. Then let's set off, and tell us on the way. When they came to the garage, Luo Yan saw a number of mecha carriers passing by not far away, and drove out of the garage. After they entered their respective transport vehicles, Yan Wenbo's voice rang out in the team channel. There are unusual changes in the Misty Canyon, in Forbidden Area number 3. You should know that a few days ago, Lanquan Base was in urgent need of help, and Colonel Liang Jian led a team of people to rush to support. Everyone said they knew. Yan Wenbo continued, when Colonel Liang Jian and his team arrived, the base was almost destroyed. They drove away a high-level behemoth Bayu. I thought it was just an accidental incident, but then, there were constant behemoths coming out of the forbidden area, and there were many high-level behemoths among them. Therefore, Colonel Liang Jian believes that there may be abnormal conditions in the forbidden area, which may be related to the overlord level behemoth one. Some images immediately flashed through Luo Yan's mind. Thick fog, big cats, human figures, and flying insects. Last semester, when I went to the Misty Canyon for the first time, I was tricked by Luo Beacon, and encountered Huan in the thick fog. Those images are vivid. Yan Wenbo's voice continued to sound in the communication channel. Now this situation has been reported to Changping and King Guiyang. King Guiyang has just experienced a disaster, and has no spare support for the time being. The Changping Corps has promised to send people to help. As for us, we are naturally going there for this matter. Next, we will probably start exploring the inner area of the forbidden area, that is, the dangerous area, to find out what happened to the overlord level beast. Captain Zheng should also go to the forbidden area, so everyone has to perform well. Do you understand? Understood. Luo Yan and others responded in the communication channel. A few days later, the convoy arrived at the Lanquan base. It has been several months since the last time I came to the base. When I saw it today, Luo Yan saw that the entire base was almost destroyed. This base located in a deserted city is full of ruins and broken walls. Almost half of the city's buildings have been razed to the ground, and traces of fighting can be seen everywhere. Obviously, the convoy cannot drive into the city like this, so one by one, the transport vehicles circled on the road outside the city and drove to a temporary base that had just been built outside the city. This base has simple facilities, and there is not even a mecha parking warehouse. Some mechs are patrolling, and some are half kneeling on the ground for emergency parking. After Luo Yan and others arrived, they did not assign tasks immediately, so they parked the mechs, and walked around to familiarize themselves with the camp. That's Changping. Kang Shun raised his head, and looked at the road sign above his head. There was an arrow with the words Changping Corps on it. Speaking of which, there was some unpleasantness with the Changping Corps during the Sangmentia battle that day. Thinking of this, Luo Yan subconsciously wanted to leave, and didn't want to have too much intersection with the Changping Corps. Suddenly, a car sound came, and in the convoy heading to the Changping parking lot, an off-road vehicle drove towards Luo Yan and others like crazy. Bei and Kang Shun subconsciously took 2 steps back, but Luo Yan and Dugu Changxin looked at the approaching car coldly. Luo Yan placed his hand on the handle of the star splitter, while Dugu Changxin clenched his fist and lowered his center of gravity, ready to pounce. Just as one of them was about to draw his sword and the other was about to pounce, the off-road vehicle braked suddenly. The tires rubbing against the sand made a sharp sound, and a cloud of dust rose up. Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly, looked at someone standing up in the car, and laughed. Didn't scare you? The dust and smoke were blown away by the wind, and a strong young man wearing a driving suit was seen standing in the car. He smiled and said, "My name is Ma Shuo. If you are injured, you can come to the camp in Changping to find me." Behind Luo Yan, Kang Shun frowned and said, "How can you drive like you?" "Sorry, I drank a little, and was a little too excited." Ma Shuo waved his hand, "But you are not injured. We are all mecha masters, so don't care so much." Then he whistled at Bei. "The little sister is good looking." A strange smile appeared on Bei's face. "How do you want to die?" Ma Shuo was stunned for a moment, then laughed. "This little sister is really interesting. Really interesting." Someone above snorted. "Ma, what do you mean? Do you think I'm dead?" A woman stood up in the co-pilot seat. She was not very old and had a beautiful face. She was also wearing a driving suit, outlining her tall and curvy figure, with high breasts, peach-shaped buttocks, and an exaggeratedly thin waist. She jumped out of the car and walked to the camp by herself. Marshall laughed. "Don't be like this, Jiuying. What kind of jealousy are you eating? Do you think I like a washboard?" The woman named Jiuying raised her hand without looking back as she walked away and raised a middle finger to Marshall. At this time, a cold voice came from behind the SUV. "We are going to be late. Can you hurry up, Captain Ma?" It was a young man of the same age as Jiuying, tall and thin, with cold white skin, like the legendary vampire. "I'm not worried about what you are worried about. And, Meng Fangxi, you are only in your early 20s. Don't act like an old man all day long. You don't pick up girls, don't drink wine, and you don't even smile very often. You won't get a wife like this." Marshall sat down, started the car, and was about to leave. Ding. A sword with a faint blue crack gently knocked on the hood of the SUV. One foot was raised and stepped on the crash barrier of the SUV. Jiuying. Dugu Changxin. The former had red eyes and a gloomy look, while the latter had silver hair flying. Marshall spread his hands, looking bewildered. Dugu Changxin said in a hoarse voice, "Are you leaving? Didn't your mother teach you that if you almost hit someone while driving, you should at least say sorry to them sincerely?" Suddenly, a black shadow floated over the SUV. The tall and thin young man Meng Fangxi flipped over the windshield and kicked Jiuying in the face. Jiuying closed his eyes slightly, stretched out his hand suddenly, grabbed the other's calf, and pulled it to the ground, and Meng Fangxi fell in front of the wheel. Just as he was about to turn over and jump up, a purple lightning fell in front of his eyes. With a slight sound, splitting star pierced into the ground next to his face, and the sword body was still shaking. Jiuying spoke at this time. "Lie down. Try to move." Chapter 308. Drastic Change. Meng Fangxi's face flushed red. Shame, anger, unwillingness, fear. All kinds of emotions rushed into his mind. He was too lazy to talk nonsense just now, and wanted to repel Jiuying and Dugu Changxin in one fell swoop, but he was thrown to the ground as soon as he made a move. He was also threatened by Jiuying. He didn't expect that Jiuying looked young, about the same age as himself. But not only was he skilled, but the murderous aura in his eyes was as strong as substance. Being looked at by Jiuying, he was actually scared and afraid, so that he dared not move for a while. This was a real humiliation for him. But now he really didn't dare to act rashly. Jiuying's eyes made him know that if he moved, Jiuying might really stab him in the face with a sword. Marshall on the off-road vehicle was also stunned. He knew that his teammates were impatient. He was not surprised that Meng Fangxi took action. But Marshall was surprised that he was subdued in a face-to-face encounter. He smiled. "Who are you?" Dugu Changxin said coldly. "Guangling Corps, Squad 3, Team 4. So you are brothers from Team 4. Nice to meet you." Marshall laughed dryly. "This is indeed my fault. I'm sorry for bumping into you. I apologize to you. Look, do you want to let my little Meng get up?" Seeing that he apologized, Jiuying put away the splitting star. Dugu Changxin also took his foot off the guardrail. The four of them walked away. Meng Fangxi jumped up suddenly, his neck turned red with anger, and he looked at Marshall with gritted teeth. "Did you really apologize to him? What else? To watch you being stabbed to death by a sword?" Marshall said with a smile. "Besides, it was indeed my fault. I was a little too much just now. Fortunately, I didn't hit anyone, otherwise it would be even more trouble. Did you see the kid with red eyes just now? I just remembered that someone in our regiment was killed by him before. He is a ruthless character. I advise you to stay away from him." Meng Fangxi's chest heaved. "He threatened me just now." Marshall leaned on the steering wheel with a smile on his face. "You won't lose a piece of meat if you are threatened by others, young man. Let the captain teach you. As men, we must be able to bend and stretch. When we meet that kind of ruthless character, we have to curl up into a ball so that we can live 100 years. When we meet a top-notch person like Jiuying, then we have to. You understand?" Meng Fangxi said angrily. "Is this how to bend and stretch?" "That's about it. Okay, get up and go back to the camp." Marshall waved. Meng Fanxi glanced in the direction of Guanglin camp and got in the car angrily. As soon as their car entered Changping's camp, the alarm sounded in the temporary base. Luo Yan and others also received the attack order on their mobile phones, and the four of them hurried to the mecha parking point. Mecha White Dragon. Since the last battle, the Hyperion heavy mortar was destroyed. The Cory installed a machine gun on the White Dragon. The Yazi aviation machine gun has a barrel length of 16.7 meters, a large caliber, and a high rate of fire. It can fire physical bullets and force bullets, which is very practical, and it is a direct fire gun, and its efficiency is only higher than that of the mortar. After Luo Yan entered the cab, he was busy putting on his helmet, connecting the neural wire, and empathizing with the mecha. After some debugging, the mecha started. Guangling City, in the core command center. Zeng stood on the command bridge, looking at the model on the big screen in front. This is a three-dimensional model of the number 3 forbidden area. According to the evolution of the data on the model, it can be seen that the area of the forbidden area is quietly expanding. The Chief of General Staff Xing Feng stood next to him. The Chief of General Staff was over 50 years old, with grey hair and deep nasolabial folds. With his hands behind his back, his eyes were solemn. The situation is not optimistic. According to the computer's deduction, the area of the number 3 forbidden area will continue to expand. In a month, all the previous safe areas will become dangerous areas. Xing Feng frowned and said, something may happen inside the forbidden area. At this time, someone reported, Captain, Dr. Jiuying is here. In the office, Zeng and Xing Feng saw Jiuying in camouflage clothes. From her appearance, she seemed to have just returned from the wild. Forbidden Land No. the third of may be evolving in the direction of a GD. As soon as they met, Jiuying went straight to the point. I've just looked at the data model, and a lot of data show that Misty Canyon is evolving in the direction of a GD. The owner of the Forbidden Land, the Overlord class Behemoth, is probably in the process of evolving. Once it completes the evolution and becomes a Nightmare class Behemoth, Forbidden Land number 3 will be renamed number 26 GD. Zeng glanced at Xing Feng, who immediately transmitted the news to the front line and notified the Changping Corps. Zeng then said, Drive Jiuying, what suggestions do you have about this matter? Jiuying, with cold grey eyes, said, go deep into the forbidden area, eliminate the overlord level behemoth, and prevent it from advancing. This is the only way. From the current data, the GD will be formed in less than a month. In other words, you must eliminate the owner of the forbidden area within 20 days. I have already informed the Giant Beast Strategic House about this matter, and the 2 accompanying Xiangang Dragon Riders will assist you. This matter must be resolved as soon as possible. Zeng said seriously, I understand. I'll leave right away. He looked at Xing Feng. Old Xing, let Team 1 get ready and go with me. Team 2 will stay in the underground city. Xing Feng frowned slightly. This is not something that can be rushed back in a day or two. What about the city lord election? Zeng shook his head slightly. Compared to the election, this matter is more important. If Forbidden Land number 3 becomes GD number 26, we are so close to the GD, and the underground city may be very dangerous. D can't ignore the safety of the underground city for his own selfish reasons. If you can't be the city lord, then don't be the city lord. He left decisively. That day, Zeng of the Guanglin Corps personally led a team of 5 teams to the forbidden area. That night, Xing Feng was reading a report in his office. A staff officer came in and whispered in his ear, the old commander is here. Xing Feng narrowed his eyes slightly. After a moment, the former corps commander Gaolin walked in with a smile. Old Xing, how are you now? Thank you for your thoughtfulness, old Gao, and you should be doing well. You have the support of the Luo family. Look at your spirit, it's much better than mine. Xing Feng put down the tablet and said with a smile. Gaolin laughed, then lowered his voice and said, what happened? I heard that your captain took a group to the forbidden area today. Xing Feng nodded. The forbidden area has changed drastically. Dr. Jiuying came to warn us. She believes that the master of the forbidden area may be evolving. Once successfully promoted to the nightmare level, the forbidden area will become a GD. Gaolin closed his eyes slightly. So, your captain won't be able to come back for a while? Chapter 309, Killing the Dragon and the Phoenix. I'm afraid that's right. As they talked, Xing Feng and Gaolin moved to the reception area. Xing Feng personally boiled water and brewed tea to entertain Gaolin. After a while, the fragrance of tea filled the air. Gaolin's eyes flickered and he said, "In your opinion, how many days will it take for that kid to come back?" Xing Feng brewed tea and said, "At least 10 days and half a month. If it doesn't go well, it may take another 3 to 4 weeks. At least half a month, at most 4 weeks." Gaolin picked up the cup of tea that Xing Feng put in front of him, took a sip, and a smile gradually widened at the corner of his mouth. "I know what you are thinking," Xing Feng said slowly. "When the captain left, I warned him that, if he left now, he might not be able to take care of the city lord election." Gaolin asked casually, "What did he say?" Xing Feng rolled his eyes and looked at the former captain. He said that he can't ignore the safety of the city because of his own selfishness. He also said that, if he can't be the city lord, then he can't be the city lord. Gaolin's expression moved slightly, and there seemed to be a contradiction in his eyes. He struggled, but was soon replaced by a determination. Xing Feng washed the cup and said, "What are your plans next?" Gaolin said frankly, before restarting the investigation, Luo Xianai had quietly collected relevant evidence, which is enough to help him wash away the stain of smuggling parasites. Now it's just a formality. I think in another 3 or 4 days, he will be able to continue to participate in the city lord election with a clean name. By then, the organizer will give a certain amount of vote compensation, and it is very likely that he will surpass Wu Shimo and the kid named D in one fell swoop. Xing Feng did not seem surprised. Luo Xianai really has a trick up his sleeve. I was wondering why he was so low-key and had no reaction at all. So he was waiting here. Gaolin nodded. Even I didn't expect him to be able to turn the tables, let alone other people. For the time being, Xing Feng made a cup of tea and pushed it to Gaolin. He can't turn the tables for the time being, or in other words, the city lord election has to be suspended until Captain D comes back. At that time, we won't help anyone. But now, not it's unfair to Captain D to continue the election now. Gaolin was stunned for a moment, then laughed. "Old Xing, you want to intervene? But forgive me for being blunt. Even if you, the chief of staff of the corps, speak up, you are probably not qualified to suspend the election, right?" "I know." Xing Feng took out the third teacup and brewed it. At this time, a voice outside the door said, "How about adding me?" Gaolin looked up, and his pupils shrank slightly. The Minister of Network Information, Fang Yao, walked in. This middle-aged man, who was not very tall, gentle and refined, and looked like he would be blown down by a gust of wind, sat down on Xing Feng's left hand with a smile. Gaolin looked at Xing Feng, then at Fang Yao, and then sighed. "I thought Mr. Fang was a free-spirited person who never cared about this kind of thing." Fang Yao took the cup of tea that Xing Feng pushed over, and said with a smile, "Old Xing told me about Captain D's situation this afternoon, and also expressed his own views. I think this is right. Since it is an election, we must be fair. We can't let Captain D fight hard on the front line, while some people sit back and reap the fruits of his labor. There are indeed many unfair things in this world, but Fang can't stand such injustice." Gaolin raised his head and looked at the Minister of Information. "But Mr. Fang, do you think Wu Shimo and Luo Xianai will agree?" Fang Yao laughed. "These two are truly outstanding people. But if Fang says no, then even if he is a dragon, he has to lie down for me, and even if he is a phoenix, he has to shrink for me. Fang is not talented, but he has some experience in killing dragons and phoenixes." The more Gaolin drank, the less he felt that the tea tasted good. He sighed and stood up. "I will warn Luo Xianai, but I cannot guarantee whether he will listen or not." Xing Feng stood up. "I will take you there." Gaolin shook his head. "I still know the way. You guys continue to drink." He walked out of the office. Gaolin smiled bitterly. "Old Xing, this guy actually invited him out. The previous generation of Dragon Rider, Star of Death Fang Yao, who could have thought that a murderer who walked out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood would become an inconspicuous information minister in a small underground city? Xing, this kid, is still very lucky. Old Xing actually pulled Fang out to protect him." With another sigh, Gaolin left.
Asterisk 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 Forbidden Land number 3. The moon was high in the sky. Although the moonlight was bright, it could not shine into the thick fog that enveloped the Forbidden Land. The white dragon and other mechs walked in the thick fog. All the lights on the mechs were turned on, but they could only illuminate the space of about 20 meters around them. In the cab, Luo Yan drove the Wuang Zuan and looked out through the panoramic window. Apart from the scene that seemed to be in a sea of fire, the thick fog could not block his sight. Kang Shun's voice rang out in the communication channel. This was a safe zone before. It's actually foggy here. It's really weird. Yan Wenbo reminded. During the meeting in the afternoon, I heard that Dr. Jiuying issued a warning that the number 3 forbidden area is evolving in the direction of a GD. Moreover, according to the data model of the command center, the scope of the forbidden area is expanding every day. This should be the reason why the behemoth in the danger zone ran out and even attacked the Lanquan base. You all have to be careful and don't act without authorization. Do you understand? In the communication channel, 3 or 4 people said in unison, understood. At this time, Luo Yan saw several mecha signals appear on the radar, showing the words Changping Corps, 2nd Squad, 6th Team. Dugu Changxin's voice immediately sounded in the communication channel. What are the Changping Corps doing here? Yan Wenbo said, it should be the same cleanup mission as us, right? Don't worry about them, we will go back after cleaning the target area. At this time, Kang Shun reminded, we have arrived near the target area. At the same time, the radar also showed the spectrum signals of 2 giant beasts. Both were orange intermediate level giant beasts. Codename, Zishao Snake. Level, intermediate level 2. Type, scale insect. Features, 2 heads, poisonous water, dreaming. Codename, Rocking Bull. Level, intermediate level 4. Similar to, caterpillar. Features, divine power, shockwave, thunder. On the command desk, the light screen displayed the information of the 2 giant beasts. Yan Wenbo's voice sounded, I will deal with the 2-headed snake. Xiaoluashin, you go to deal with the big bull. Kang Shun's I obey, you are responsible for support, and at the same time, be alert to other giant beasts approaching. Begin to move. The order was issued. Luo Yan immediately drove the white dragon and rushed towards his target. The thick fog could not stop the mecha from moving forward, and it was hit by the mecha and surged like a tide. Not long after, even without the Wuang Zian on, Luo Yang could see that a giant beast appeared in the bright light. The rocking bull, as a level 4 beast, was extremely large. Lying on the ground with its knees bent, the forest was like a green carpet under it. The body of this giant beast was covered with dark blue lines like thunderbolts. When the mecha appeared, the lines on its body lit up, leaping with electric light. With a roar, in the sky, shrouded in thick fog, a thunderbolt exploded and struck the white dragon. Chapter 310 A Misunderstanding. When the thunder fell, the white dragon emitted a bright yellow light, and in the light, a majestic mountain shadow condensed. Surrounded by mountains, there was another blue sea with surging waves, and in the void, there were waves of tides. The thunder of the shaking cow struck down, and the blue sea suddenly rolled up thousands of waves, consuming the power of the thunder layer by layer. When the thunder broke through the waves, it was blocked by the shadows of the mountains, and the already dim lightning became 3 points dimmer. Finally, it fell directly on the white dragon mecha. The lightning was as thin as a gossamer. In addition to causing a slight surge in the mecha, it could not even damage the coating of the outer armor. Luo Yan controlled the white dragon and strode forward, holding the heavy shield station high in front of him, and the Yazi aviation machine gun behind the mecha pointed at the giant beast, and the muzzle of the gun spurted out endlessly, firing powerful bullets one after another. The rate of fire of up to 1,700 rounds per minute made the bullets form a fire whip, which hit the body of the rocking cow. The rocking cow belongs to the caterpillar, and among the 5 types of giant beasts, it has the thickest skin and flesh, and can withstand a lot of beatings. But it couldn't stand being whipped by the whip of the machine gun. The black and green hair on its body was whipped all over, and countless parasites in the hair were directly blasted into meat paste. A blood groove was plowed out of the body of the rocking cow, and it screamed in pain.
Under the light of the mecha, Luo Yan saw that Dugu Changxin's mecha Fidian was coming at high speed at this time, and the long spear dragon gallbladder in his hand turned into a silver light and hit the big head of the giant beast fiercely. But the skull of the rocking cow was as hard as fine steel. The dragon gallbladder stabbed with all its strength, but did not penetrate the brain. Instead, it bounced back with a ding sound, rubbing a string of sparks in the palm of the mecha. Then the rocking bull suddenly stood up, and then stomped the ground heavily with its two front hooves. It created a shockwave, which stirred up waves of earth and mud and spread all around. White Dragon stopped shooting, lowered its center of gravity, and used its large shield to resist. The shockwave only shook the mecha, but it did not retreat. Fidian was not so good. Its body was not as heavy as White Dragon, and it did not have time to make a posture to resist the impact. The mecha was immediately shocked back again and again. As a mid-level giant beast, the rocking bull had a certain degree of intelligence and knew to pick on the weak. When it saw that Fidian was repelled, it immediately rushed towards Fidian with its four hooves flying, and its big head swung wildly. With its divine power, it pushed the mecha up and whistled into the thick fog, and it was unknown where it fell. White Dragon raised his shield to protect it, and the machine gun on his shoulder continued to fire, bombarding the giant beast. At the same time, he drew out his long sword Fian, shook his wrist and slashed. The sword tip suddenly burst out in visible ripples, twisted the air, and slashed a bloody wave on the shaking cow. Sword key. Using machine guns and sword key to attack at the same time, White Dragon quickly beat the shaking cow to a bloody mess. The shaking cow roared, and the patterns on his body lit up, causing White Dragon's apostrophe head to strike one thunder after another. Unfortunately, these thunders could not break through the defense of White Dragon, so after the Behe and Jiuying weakened twice, the damage to the mecha was negligible. In a blink of an eye, the shaking cow was full of blood and staggered. Not to mention thunder, even the shockwave could not be used. He had a lot of divine power, but he couldn't even touch the shield of White Dragon, so he couldn't use his divine power. Luo Yan used guerrilla tactics to almost consume the blood and physical energy of the shaking cow, and only the final kill was left. At this moment, a set of data suddenly jumped out from the corner of Luo Yan's eyes. Then, right in front of the rocking cow, several empty walls exploded in succession. The thing that blew up these invisible barriers appeared in the air. It turned out to be an armor-piercing bullet with a deformed warhead. Although deformed, it still rubbed against the air with the support of strong kinetic energy, pulling out a flame and heading straight for the rocking cow. But at this moment, a black shadow inserted between the bullet and the giant beast. White Dragon. Ding. In the end, the deformed bullet hit the big shield station, and the warhead was squeezed and deformed, and fell at the feet of White Dragon. The rocking cow used up its last breath, and struggled to push towards White Dragon. Luo Yan didn't look at it, and the long sword Fian twisted and chopped down, slashing out a thunder, breaking through the thick fog, and hitting the big head of the rocking cow. Combat skills, sword moving wind and thunder. The rocking cow's head exploded immediately, and the headless body stumbled and rolled, sliding all the way on the ground, and finally stopped behind White Dragon. At this time, Dugu Changxin arrived in the Fidian. Seeing the Beilong holding up the shield and facing forward, he blurted out, "What's going on?" Luo Yan looked at the thick fog in the distance through the panoramic window and said coldly, "Someone wants to steal the credit." No one in the 3rd squad and 4th team used a sniper rifle. The shot just now was obviously done by an outsider. It was not too early or too late, and it was fired just when the cow was about to be harvested. What else could it be if it wasn't stealing the credit? If it wasn't to prevent the cow from escaping? Kang Shun had arranged a circle of empty walls on the battlefield in advance, and the cow would have been shot in the head by someone else. In that case, Luo Yan and his team worked hard for a whole night, and most of the credit was shared out. Who could swallow this breath? Dugu Changxin snorted immediately, turned on the mecha's external speaker and shouted, "Whoever did it, get out." The Xiuhu, Baymen, and Judge Mechas rushed over and stood beside the Beilong and Fidian. A familiar voice rang out in the thick fog, "Misunderstanding, misunderstanding." A figure flashed through Luo Yan's mind. Chang Pingkor, Ma Shuo. Then lights lit up in the fog, and then one mecha after another walked out of the fog. One of them was holding a sniper rifle in its hand, and it was obvious that the previous attack was its masterpiece. In the embroidered tiger mecha, Yan Wenbo also turned on the external speaker. Brother Changping, what's going on? Don't you know we are on a mission here? Ma Shuo's voice rang out from the black mecha leading the several mechas on the opposite side. I know. What a coincidence. Our mission location is also nearby. Just now we were about to harvest a giant beast. Xiao Meng fired a shot, but the beast was smart and dodged in advance. It's a coincidence that Xiao Meng's shooting position and the trajectory were pointing right at you. If you don't believe it, we can provide a trajectory analysis later, and you will understand it at a glance. In short, this is a misunderstanding. Besides, we can't really steal the credit from you Guangling, right? Even if Xiao Meng's shot was an accident, and he really took your prey. Don't worry, we won't ask you for any credit afterwards. Yan Wenbo laughed. What's the captain's name? Ma Shuo. Yan Wenbo said, Captain Ma, this time I will just treat it as a misunderstanding. Don't let it happen again next time. Ma Shuo immediately said, okay, then we won't bother you guys in Guangling anymore. The black mecha bowed, made a gesture, and left with the other mechas. Luo Yan said nothing, but just remembered Meng Fanx's mecha. Chapter 311, Childish. Changping Camp. In the tent of the 2nd squad and the 6th team. What the hell is wrong with you? Ma Shuo was sober now, and grabbed Meng Fanxi by the collar. Don't tell me you don't know that the prey of Guangling is under your trajectory. As a sniper, it is natural that he cannot be unaware of this. Meng Fanxi said frankly, I just want to teach those guys a lesson. Teach them a lesson? What lesson do you have to teach them? Ma Shuo slapped Meng Fanxi's face. I went to inquire about it this afternoon. The guy who killed one of us went to Qingyang 2 months ago. Do you know what he did in Qingyang? He saved the entire Qingyang and was named Qingyang God General. The mecha statue is now on display in the dungeon over there. Besides, it was you who started it that day. You are not as skilled as him, and you are not convinced. You actually want to get back at him on the battlefield. What are you thinking? Meng Fanxi pushed Ma Shuo away. What's wrong with Qingyang God General? Everyone can brag. Did you see him save the dungeon with your own eyes? Yeah, I was not as skilled as him that day. Do I have to admit defeat just because I'm not as skilled as him? Do you think everyone is like you, laughing and joking every day, as if you are familiar with everyone? Do you know what people outside say about our Team 6? If I were you, I would be laughing, even though I didn't have time to cry. I just don't want to be looked down upon. I just don't want our team to be said to be the last one. I just want those people to know that I'm not so easy to bully. Is there anything wrong with that? After saying that, the tall and thin young man unveiled his tent. Ma Shuo laughed in anger. Well, I'm still wrong? Why doesn't this kid understand that it is a taboo to steal other people's credit on the battlefield? You really think they are stupid and can't hear that I'm fooling them? They don't care because they don't want to lose face. If you think the Team 6 is too small to accommodate a great god like you, don't feel wronged and quickly apply for a transfer. Damn it, it will only cause trouble for me. The other team members hurriedly tried to comfort him, and the matter was dropped. The next day, Ma Shuo's team continued to go on missions. Several team members cooperated and almost consumed the 2 giant beasts. They drove them together and were about to close a net. At this moment, the drivers in the mecha cockpit all felt a strong sense of crisis and instinctively retreated. At the moment they controlled the mecha to retreat, a thin light curtain like smoke and aura cut through the void and whizzed through the space left by the mechas. This seemingly faint light was unimaginably sharp. It passed between the bodies of the 2 giant beasts at once. After the light disappeared, the 2 giant beasts stopped moving at the same time. Then the body separated to the left and right, with a smooth cut surface. After a while, the blood and internal organs poured out of the body cavity when the body fell to the ground. Looking at the 2 giant beasts that were killed on the ground, Ma Shuo was stunned for a moment. Meng Fanxi roared immediately, "Who? Get out." Then in the relatively light fog during the day, they saw a mecha with silver and white as the main color, supplemented by black and yellow, coming out with a shield and a sword. White Dragon. Ma Shuo suddenly felt a headache and couldn't help patting his forehead with his hand.
Meng Fanx's expression was even more interesting, with shock, surprise, and anger intertwined. Then the Changping Corps heard Luo Yan's cold voice from the speaker of White Dragon. Misunderstanding. You two giant beasts are just in my sword force. If you don't believe me, I will show you the analysis chart later. Oh, by the way, although I killed the giant beast, but I don't want any credit, you can rest assured. After saying that, White Dragon notched his hands like Marshuo did yesterday, and turned away. Marshuo covered his face and sighed softly. This time I really lost my face. His voice sounded in the team communication channel. Meng Fanx's face turned pale and blue. Finally, he clenched his fist and slammed it hard on the command desk, unable to say a word. Asterisk 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 Guanglin Corps Camp. Yan Wenbo glanced at Luo Yan and said with a smile, I didn't realize that you are quite childish Zio Luo. I thought you would be more mature than you look. Luo Yan did not respond. Du Guchangxin snorted and said, those people deserve it. They are allowed to lie with their eyes open, but we are not allowed to fight back. Yan Wenbo picked up the tablet and said with a smile, I didn't say no. When Zio Luo made a move, I was too late to stop him. But, using your unique skills to find a place, Zio Luo, you are a bit extravagant. Next time you find a place, don't be so arrogant, at least give him some face. As they were talking, Kang Shun came in, panting and gesturing. The regiment commander is here. A moment later, all members of the 3rd Squad and 4th Team arrived at the command tent and met the new Corps Commander-in-Chief, Di Zeng. After scanning the young faces, Di Zeng said concisely, the owner of the Forbidden Land, the Overlord level beast is evolving towards the Nightmare level. Once successful, the Forbidden Land will become a GD that will threaten the nearby dungeons. So next, I will personally lead the team, together with the captain of Changping, to go deep into the Forbidden Land and kill the Overlord level beast Yuan. In view of the fact that this beast has the characteristics of illusion, and Luo Yan's Qitong has the ability to break through obstacles and recognize illusions after transforming into breaking barriers. Therefore, this operation requires the 4 of you to go together. Go and prepare. Liang Jian is now entering the Forbidden Land to investigate. When he sends us the location of Huan, we will set off. Disband. At the same time, in the Misty Canyon, a team of mechs are going deep. Led by Lian, 7 mechs formed a goose formation and stabbed deeply into the Forbidden Land like a dagger. They had entered the dangerous area of the Forbidden Land. Once they entered the dangerous area, the fog became visibly thicker, and some ambiguous rusty yellow was floating in the grey-white fog. From time to time, a gust of wind blew out from the depths of the Forbidden Land, and the wind and clouds suddenly surged. The wind did not blow away the thick fog. On the contrary, it made the grey-yellow fog thicker. Everyone, be careful. No one knows what changes are happening in the depths of the Forbidden Land now. In the cab, Colonel Liang Jian reminded, and he looked at the giant beast radar on the side from time to time. The radar kept scanning the surroundings, but the images on it kept flickering, and sometimes the data would even freeze and take 2 or 3 seconds to recover. Things like this have never happened before. Liang Jian couldn't help but look at the grey fog with rusty yellow outside the panoramic window, wondering if it was related to the changes in the thick fog. At this moment, a row of pale green rockets emitting a foul smell flew out of the thick fog and fell on the Flame and other mechs. The giant beast is coming. But when Liang Jian looked at the radar, he found that the instrument did not detect any spectrum of giant beasts. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 312. The situation is bad. Be careful. Liang Jian immediately warned. The radar of the giant beast did not scan the spectrum signal. The instrument may be malfunctioning. At the same time, the Mecha Flame drew out its double swords and deflected the green rockets. After being deflected, the green rockets fell on the rocks and corroded the hard rocks into a big pit. Once they stabbed into the trees, with a bang, they lit the trees into green torches.
Whether corroding the rocks or igniting the trees, they all exuded an extremely strong smell of decay, like thousands of dead fish thrown in the sun. Fortunately, the pilots were isolated by mechs, otherwise, the smell alone would make them feel uncomfortable and difficult to fight normally. Empty walrus and iron armor was blessed. The mecha master, who was good at Zuanshu, immediately let the mechas form seals, and released one Zuanshu after another to assist and protect their own mechas. Several other Zuanjis carried rifles and machine guns, and fired at the place where the green rockets flew. The thick fog was stirred, and a roar came from the depths of the fog. Then a black shadow quickly climbed out of the thick fog, and slammed into a mecha. Amid the roar, the mecha flew out, and fell into the thick fog. The driver in the mecha was dizzy, and then heard an alarm on the command console. The computer showed that the outer armor of the mecha had different degrees of corrosion. At the impact site of this mecha, the outer armor of the body was emitting green smoke, and some yellow-green liquid on it was corroding the outer armor crazily, corroding the outer armor into pits. The driver shouted "damn it," and started the cleaning protocol. The mecha raised its arm and sprayed liquid from its fingers to wash the corroded outer armor. Those were neutralizers that could quickly neutralize acidic substances. Under their flushing, the corrosion of the mecha finally stopped. But at this time, a black shadow pounced over and knocked down the mecha. Through the panoramic window, the driver saw a giant crocodile with multiple rotten parts on its body biting the mech frantically. He could even see the internal organs of the giant beast wriggling in the festering wounds of the rotten crocodile, and from time to time parasites fell off and landed on the panoramic window. "Get out of here," the driver yelled, and asked the mech to raise its machine gun to fire. But the rifle did not threaten the giant beast, because the other party unfolded a pale green fire curtain. Anti-membrane. This is a first level giant beast. The anti-membrane unfolded, and other means could not threaten the giant beast except for the elemental force. Fortunately, at this time, Flame and other mechas used the mysterious art black rope in time to drag the rotten crocodile away. The rotten crocodile naturally did not want to be restrained. The giant beast roared and spewed green fire from the festering wounds in its body. Those pale green flames with a rotten smell transformed into a series of ghosts. Some of those pale green ghosts were giant beasts, some were animals, and some were humans. There were countless of them, big and small. They flew in all directions, rushing towards the flame and other mechas. Being rushed by these green fire ghosts would not only ignite the flames, cause explosions and shocks. Those green flames would also erode the outer armor of the body at an extremely fast speed, causing them to melt quickly. A circle of green ghosts exploded, and many mechas were repelled by the impact. Suddenly, half of the mechas disappeared in the thick fog, and disappeared from Liang Jian's sight. Reorganize the formation. Liang Jian's voice sounded in the communication channel. A mecha master was about to respond, when he suddenly heard the sound of water. He was stunned. Where did the water come from in the cab? The mecha master lowered his head and looked at his feet, but saw that a mist had floated up from the ground of the cab at some point. Under the faint mist, there was actually water bubbling up. He raised his feet, as if he had been electrocuted. Some bad memories suddenly flashed through his mind. The mecha master quickly tapped on the command console and activated the cab's rejection function, which is designed to prevent water from entering the cab or fire, and can eliminate abnormalities in a very short time. However, after the rejection function was activated, the water on the ground was still bubbling up, and the speed was getting faster and faster. No, no, no. The mecha master, who had experienced drowning, almost shrank his feet to the chair and shouted, "My cab is flooded. I can't eliminate the abnormality. I have to use the emergency escape device." After saying that, he activated the emergency escape device. The pop-up window above the cab opened, and his seat was sent to the window with the help of the mechanical arm, and then the base sprayed flames and ejected him from the window. For a moment, he was like flying in the clouds, quickly moving away from the battlefield. A moment later, the seat ejected a parachute, allowing him to land safely. In the cab, Liang Jian was stunned when he heard the report from the mecha master just now. Then he said in a deep voice, "Everyone, don't panic, stay calm." At this moment, a low strange sound came from behind Liang Jian in the cab. Woo woo woo. It sounded like a night owl calling, or like a woman sobbing. The sound was soft and hairy, sweeping through Liang Jian's heart. The hairs on Liang Jian's body stood up immediately. Reason told him that there could not be a cat or a woman in the cab, but he still looked back little by little. For some reason, the light in the cab became extremely dim, and a faint mist was floating. In the mist, Liang Jian heard the strange sound continue to come, but he didn't see even a ghost. He shouted in a low voice, "Who is there?" No one answered. The crying stopped. Liang Jian turned his head. Suddenly, his whole body stiffened, his scalp numbed, and his whole body felt like it was electrified, and his hair stood up. On the command desk, in a slightly light grey mist, there was a pair of red high heels. Suddenly, a shadow flashed through Liang Jian's mind, and a voice he thought he had forgotten rang in his ears. "Liang Jian, look here. Liang Jian, let's get married. Liang Jian, I'm leaving. Take care of yourself. Liang Jian, don't blame her. She's sick. She didn't tell you, because she didn't want to make you sad. Liang Jian, she's gone. She's gone to heaven." Suddenly, Liang Jian's tiger eyes spurted out anger. Who is it? Who is playing tricks? In the thick fog far away from the battlefield, a group of black shadows lurked, and three tails danced gently and irregularly. After a moment, another tail joined. A total of 4 long tails danced again and again in the thick fog. Asterisk 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 in the mecha camp. 3 squads, 4 teams. 3 squads, 4 teams. Please assemble at parking lot number 7 when you hear the notice. Repeat it again. A base vehicle was driving in the camp, and the wind blew Luo Yan's black hair, causing his hair to float to the back of his head. In the car, Yan Wenbo said in a heavy tone, "Just now, the command center lost contact with Colonel Liang Jian. All members of the reconnaissance team he led were cut off from contact and their lives are unknown. It seems that the situation in the forbidden area is worse than imagined." Chapter 313 Mental Breakdown. The base vehicle stopped with a squeak, and Luo Yan jumped out of the car and saw a busy scene. Cargo helicopter stopped at the open space in the unloading area, and the staff were busy unloading the cargo in the helicopters using various tools and temporarily stacked together. The mecha maintenance personnel were using lifting tools to conduct the final inspection of the mecha that was about to attack. In the busy crowd, Luo Yan saw Lin Wei, who was wearing a driving suit and standing with Jia Mao. The two seemed to be talking, and then Lin Wei walked towards her mecha, the red-painted red moth. Is she going out too? At this time, Luo Yan's arm was gently bumped. It was Kang Shun. He pointed to a mecha in the distance. "Look, that's Captain D's Zuan-Yi, a god-level mecha." The captain's god-level mecha is not used casually. This shows that the change in the forbidden area this time is not simple. Luo Yan looked in the direction of his finger and landed on a black mecha. This mecha is armored with special materials, with black scales all over the body, making it look like it was transformed from a black dragon. The eyes, energy nodes, and decorative patterns of the mecha are all golden. The most distinctive feature is the wings that are folded behind it. The black wings are folded behind it, like a steel cloak. The Zuan-Yi is equipped with a thick shield with scales, a dragon-headed golden spear in the other hand, and a black longsword hanging on the side of the waist. Standing there, it gives people a strong sense of oppression. All along, Luo Yan has only seen Di Zheng's Lan Feng and thought that the Lan Feng was a god-level machine, but he didn't expect that the god-level machine was another one. This Zuan-Yi is more majestic and gorgeous than the Lan Feng in terms of appearance alone. Don't be in a daze. Captain Yan Wenbo's voice rang out. "Everyone get on the mechs and get ready to go." In the cab of the White Dragon, Luo Yan was doing various adjustments. At this time, Di Zheng's voice rang out in the communication channel. "Are you all ready?" "Ready." Voices rang out in the communication channel one by one. On the command console, a window appeared, which showed the formation personnel for this attack. There were 2 formations. One group was the assault team led by Di Zheng. The other group was the 3rd squad and 4th team, where Luo Yan was. There was no red moth. It seemed that Lin Wei had another mission. 2 groups of personnel, a total of 10 mechs. "Get ready to go." Di Zheng's voice rang out in the communication channel. The mission of this attack is to search for the location of the Overlord class Behemoth and to rescue Liang Jian and others who have lost contact. The forbidden area has changed. Huan may be evolving to a higher level of life. Everyone should be extremely careful. After entering the forbidden area, be careful not to get separated. Don't panic if you get separated. Send a distress signal immediately. In short, as many people go in as you get back. As long as there is hope, I will not give up on anyone. Now, attack. Xing gave an order, and 10 mechs began to move, taking huge steps, walking like giants, and left the base. When he came outside the base, through the panoramic window, Luo Yan saw another mecha team waiting. Then Yan Wenbo's voice rang out in the team channel. This is a joint operation. The Changping Corps also sent mechs to attack. I heard that their deputy commander is leading the team. Hey, there are acquaintances. Luo Yan glanced at the mechs and saw Ma Shuo and Meng Fang's mechs among them. Du Guchangxin's voice immediately rang out in the communication channel. Why is that team here too? Kang Shun said worriedly. I hope nothing unexpected will happen. Yan Wenbo smiled and said, don't worry, with the captain here, nothing will happen. Okay, concentrate. We are going to enter the forbidden area. As they spoke, the mechs of the two teams met up, keeping a certain distance. 20 mechs, led by Zhu and Yi, strode into the forbidden area and into the thick fog. Forbidden area number 3, Misty Canyon. The outer periphery of the forbidden area is covered with mountains, forests and plains. The terrain is not dangerous, but now the thick fog that originally existed only in the depths of the forbidden area has now spread to the periphery. This forced Luo Yan and others to remain vigilant. Inside and outside the thick fog, it was like a different world. Now the base is full of sunshine, and it is the brightest time of the afternoon sun. But in the forbidden area, the sunlight shining through the fog has become pale and weak, and people can't feel the original warmth of the sun at all. A storm seemed to be brewing in the thick fog, and the atmosphere was oppressive. Under the influence of the fog, the trees and rocks became twisted and weird, giving people a sense of danger. So quiet. Bei's voice sounded in the team channel. Luo Yang nodded slightly in agreement. It was indeed too quiet. Not to mention animals. Even the roar of the giant beasts was not heard. Although in recent days, the troops of the two underground cities took turns to sweep and clean up the outer areas of the forbidden area, and indeed killed many giant beasts. But it was not so quiet. Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly, and circles of fire suddenly appeared in his red eyes. Wu Wangzinan. Activating Shenzang. He scanned the surroundings and suddenly saw a grey light ball hanging in the air in front of him. Around the grey light ball, Luo Yan saw the outline of the body composed of lines. He immediately reminded, there is something ahead. Almost at the same time, Xing's voice sounded in the public channel. Stop. All mechs stopped. Then, the sound of mechanical movement came from the thick fog. The ground shook slightly, and after a moment, a mecha with mottled armor appeared in the thick fog. A mysterious mecha. It was just that many parts of the mecha's armor had fallen off and opened, exposing the circuits and devices inside. The mecha walked over in a very stiff and strange posture. Xing immediately used the external speaker function to speak. The mecha in front. I'm Xing. Please identify yourself. The damaged mecha stopped. But there was no reaction at all. Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly, locked onto the human-shaped grey light, and read the information. Liubo, 27 years old, Guangling Corps Mecha Division. Luo Yan read his voice again. Giant beasts. So many giant beasts. No. No. The huge voice text almost filled Luo Yan's field of vision. From the voice of this mecha division, it seems that his spirit has collapsed. At this moment, the damaged mecha suddenly raised its rifle, bang bang bang, and fired directly at the mecha group. Zuan raised his scale shield and easily blocked the attack, while continuing to shout, stop it. I'm Xing of the Guangling Corps, not an enemy. However, just as Luo Yan guessed, after some unknown incident, the driver in the mecha obviously collapsed mentally, and controlled the mecha like crazy to attack. Seeing that shouting was fruitless, Zuan raised his shield and moved forward. The mecha took 3 or 2 steps and dived, like a black lightning in the mist, and came near the out of control mecha in an instant. Zuan raised the dragon-headed golden spear, and swept it horizontally, crossing the neck of the out of control mecha, cutting off the mecha's head and the cabin side. Under Jiuying's control, Zhu and Yi grabbed the head of the out-of-control mecha and gently placed it on the ground. At this time, a stream of liquid spurted out from the neck of the headless mecha, and then sprinkled on the ground like rain. Chapter 314 Communication Interruption. Thick fog filled the air. Du Guchangxin, wearing a helmet, came to the outside of the out-of-control mecha's cab and used a manual device to open the hatch of the cab. When the hatch was opened, you could see the lights flashing in the cab and some wires hanging from the top of the cab, but overall, the situation in the cab was still good. The panoramic window was not broken, and the driver was still fastened to the seat by the seatbelt, but the mecha master didn't seem to know that the battle was over. When Du Guchangxin and Kang Shun walked in, Liu Bo was still holding the floating controller tightly with both hands, shouting in his helmet, "Don't come over! Don't come over!" The two exchanged glances, then surrounded him from the left and right. The driver was still wearing a helmet, his eyes were wide open, bloodshot, his expression was excited and distorted, and he was in an abnormal state of excitement. Kang Shun looked at the name on the driver's suit, and then used the built-in communicator in the helmet to say, "Captain, the driver is still alive, but he is in a very bad condition. He seems to be in some kind of hallucination." "Well, I know." Kang Shun looked at Du Guchangxin. The captain said to give him an injection of tranquilizer. Du Guchangxin took out a medical kit from his tactical waste bag, took out a bottle of tranquilizer from it, and put it into the syringe. On the other side, Kang Shun had already opened the driver's helmet. During the whole process, Liu Bo didn't even look at him. But when Du Guchangxin came forward to give him an injection, Liu Bo suddenly turned his head and looked at the man with long silver hair. "Monster, go away. Go away." He jumped up to attack Du Guchangxin, but Kang Shun hugged him from behind, and Du Guchangxin took the opportunity to give him an injection. After the tranquilizer was injected, Liu Bo calmed down, and then closed his eyes and fell asleep. Du Guchangxin breathed a sigh of relief, and nodded to Kang Shun. In the end, the team member was taken with them, so that when Liu Bo wakes up, he can find out what happened to him in the forbidden area. The mecha team continued to go deeper into the forbidden area. In the communication channel, Kang Shun said, "I found out that Liu Bo is a member of the team of Colonel Liang Jian." Bei whispered, "Will the others be like this too?" There was a silence in the communication channel. Liang Jian, who led the team into the forbidden area in the morning, completely lost contact with the base a few hours later. There was nothing abnormal in the last contact, but just like that, a team with a Shenwei class mecha sitting in the lead just disappeared. In a blink of an eye, it was evening. At this time, the light in the forbidden area had become very dim, and the mecha needed to turn on the lighting to see the surrounding scenes clearly. After walking for an afternoon, Luo Yan and his team had entered the dangerous area of the forbidden area. The landform environment also changed from the previous mountains and plains to a desolate canyon area. While walking, suddenly a skull of a giant beast appeared under Luo Yan's eyes. Through the panoramic window, he could see the huge and empty eye sockets on the skull and the dense grey teeth. As the thick fog rolled, the skeleton of a giant beast loomed in the mist. Suddenly, 2 points suddenly lit up in the giant beast's sternum. Luo Yan was stimulated, and circles of fire appeared in his eyes. The Wu Wang burning eyes was turned on, and he saw a huge biological grey light lurking in the thick fog and animal bones. Giant beast. But the giant beast suddenly got out of the animal bones and ran away. The giant beast was so close, but the giant beast radar did not give any warning. Luo Yan was about to inform Jiuying of this situation, but suddenly, he felt a surge of electricity all over his body. This is a dangerous signal. Then he saw that around the mecha group, groups of grey light of giant beasts appeared at some point. The strange thing is that these giant beasts have come nearby, but the radar did not detect them. Luo Yan immediately reminded on the public channel, there are giant beasts approaching. Because it was a joint operation, the public channel was also open to the mechs of the Changping Corps. So Meng Fangxi also heard Luo Yan's reminder, but he snorted coldly, "You are kidding. The radar has no reaction at all." Before he finished speaking, a giant wolf with dark green scales all over its body and green flames under its feet jumped out of the thick fog. It pounced on his mecha all of a sudden. Under the effect of the empathy system, Mengfaxi only felt a weight on his back and shoulders, and the mecha involuntarily pounced forward. Only then did he scream out, and then looked back, so in the panoramic window, he saw a giant wolf lying on his shoulder. The giant wolf had no eyes on its head, but it opened a bloody mouth full of fangs. Then a green light lit up in the black throat, and the next second, a large ball of green flames had sprayed on the panoramic window. At the same time, one by one, giant beasts, in various shapes, rushed out of the thick fog, and crashed into the group of mechas. Because the giant beast radar failed, the mecha group was not prepared, and was killed by the giant beast group by surprise. For a moment, everyone fought on their own. Luo Yan used the heavy shield station to block the attack of a red-spotted scale snake, and then used the Yazi machine gun to bombard it. The flying metal torrent blasted the scales of the low-level giant snake, and it fled away. Then the long sword Fian slashed with a twisting sword light, cutting a Ragama that jumped down from the top of his head with a deep wound that could be seen to the bone. At this time, Dizeng's voice sounded in the communication channel. You retreat and reorganize the formation. I'll stop them for a while. Move. The Guanglin Corps had great confidence in Dizeng, and they did not doubt it when they heard it, and the mechas retreated one after another. The mecha division of the Changping Corps acted a little slower. When their deputy commander Lu Shihan shouted go quickly, Ma Shuo and others hurriedly controlled the mecha to retreat. When retreating, Luo Yan looked back and saw the cloak-like wings behind Zuan Yi spread out, the dragon head and golden spear raised high, and thunder and lightning in the sky broke through the fog, gathering from all directions and concentrating on the spear. Zuan Yi swung down the dragon head and golden spear fiercely, bringing up thousands of thunders, densely packed, tearing through the thick fog with amazing pressure, and making the hideous figures of several giant beasts appear in the air. Then the lightning fell, and in the crackling sound, the thunders with a breath of destruction woven into a forest. This forest of thunder suppressed many giant beasts. Let them burn, explode, and smash in the lightning. In the communication channel, Kang Shun whispered, there is no need for us to reorganize the formation. The captain is just worried about accidentally hurting us, so he asked us to retreat. Luo Yang nodded in agreement. The fog in front was stirring, and the electric snakes were shaking, reflecting the mecha Zuan Yi like a god. Zuan Yi folded his wings, holding the dragon-headed golden spear, and turned around. Dizeng's voice then rang out in the communication channel. Is everyone okay? Nothing. Everyone answered. Dizeng said then let's continue. He paused, then said Team 4, one of your mechas is offline. Luo Yan looked at the formation screen on the command console and saw the 8 gates icon on it, flashing the 4 big words communication interrupted. Chapter 315, The Leader's Obligations. Bay. Luo Yan looked out of the panoramic window. The surrounding area was filled with fog, and the mecha was looming in the thick fog. After a quick look, he could not see the 8 gates. Where is Bay? Where is the 8 gates? How come he disappeared in the blink of an eye? The voices of the team members rang out in the team channel. Circles of fire appeared in the red eyes. Luo Yan used the incorruptible burning eyes to search, and as far as he could see, he could not see the biological grey light of Bay. Bay could not have left without saying a word. Moreover, the signal of the 8 gates was not on the formation interface now, which meant that the mecha was far away from the team, so the signal disappeared. Looking back, it was only a few minutes from the encounter with the giant beast to Bay's disappearance. In such a short time, unless the 8 gates was determined to stay away from the team, the signal would not be disconnected. Could it be that he was captured by something? When Luo Yan had this thought, his heart moved, and something immediately fell in front of his eyes. He looked up and saw a black cloak floating down. In the hood of the cloak, there was a white mask floating, which looked like an invisible man holding up the cloak. Weird Heli Woo. Luo Yan immediately said, Zio Bei's weirdness appeared in my cockpit. Then, he saw Heli Woo's cloak floating up, outlining the outline of his arm, pointing in a direction outside the mecha. Luo Yan was stunned, and then asked, which direction is Bei? The white mask floating in Heli Woo's hood fluttered up and down, as if nodding. Luo Yan said decisively. Heli Woo pointed out Zio Bei's location. I want to go find her. Bei saved him, and now she mysteriously disappeared.
How could Luo Yan sit idly by? When Yan Wenbo was still undecided, Dizeng had already made a decision. Let's go together. Then, he explained the situation in the public channel. Hearing that the Guanglin Corps was going to rescue the missing team members, the deputy commander of the Changping Corps, LV Shahan, said immediately, "Commander Dizeng, I can understand your feelings. But it's getting late now, and the forbidden area is even more dangerous at night. We still have to search for Colonel Liang Jian and find the location of the owner of the forbidden area. I think it's putting the cart before the horse to go looking for a missing team member now." Listening to the voice on the public channel, Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly. Then he heard Dizeng say, "I don't think so. As the commander, I have an obligation to ensure the safety of every team member. Besides, I said when I set out that I would bring them all back. If this team member had unfortunately died, it would be fine. Now that she is still alive, I will not give up on her." LV Shahan was silent for a moment and then said, "Well, in that case, we will split into two groups. We will continue to go deep into the forbidden area and find the location of the owner of the forbidden area. After you find the team members, please meet up with us as soon as possible." After this matter was confirmed, the two corps acted separately. Under the guidance of Heli Wu, Luo Yan led the way in front, running in the mist. The other mechas followed and disappeared from the sight of the Changping Corps in a blink of an eye. At the same time, somewhere in the forbidden area, the demon mecha Baman, which looked like a white dog, was digging the ground with its foreclaws, but it seemed to be pulled by an invisible rope, sliding on the ground and sliding towards the depths of the forbidden area. When it suddenly encountered the giant beast just now, Baman also participated in the battle, but was suddenly taken away by an invisible force during the battle. Because the incident happened suddenly, Bei didn't even have time to ask his teammates for help and was dragged away from the team. It was not until Baman barely resisted the force that Bei could release Heli Wu to ask for help. At this time, in the cab, the corners of the girl in the helmet raised uncontrollably, revealing a stiff and weird smile. "I must hold on until classmate Luo and the others arrive." She tried hard to control the mecha to fight against the invisible force, but the force was getting stronger and stronger. The hind legs of Baman had already left the ground, and it looked like it could be dragged away at any time. "No, I can't hold on any longer." Bei tried to stay calm and find a solution. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind. The next second illusory walls rose from the ground, one after another, wrapping up the magic machine 8 gates. The 4 walls rose and combined into a big house, and then the roof and the gate were generated. Under the eaves, big red lanterns fell on both sides of the gate, and a pair of spring couplets appeared on the wall. Then, the house left the ground, and human legs appeared under the big house, as if there were giants supporting the house. Weird, a fang. As soon as this weirdness appeared, the mecha protected in the body of a fang finally got rid of the invisible gravity. Bei breathed a sigh of relief. Zuanji smiled bitterly again. "Although a fang has made me safe for the time being, He Wu can no longer show the way to Luo. However, He Wu can't show the way, but I can go and meet up with everyone." Immediately, the big house with lanterns hanging, spring couplets pasted on it, and countless human legs at the bottom, rushed into the thick fog with Bei. Deep in the thick fog, there was an angry roar. A moment later, a sharp sound suddenly rang out in the thick fog, and then a fire broke through the fog. It turned out to be a missile. The missile hit a fang at once, exploding a huge orange-yellow fireball. The shock wave caused the surrounding thick fog to surge and roll, exposing a desolate land. A fang was blown to the ground, and the mecha inside was even more unstable and staggered. Bei was dizzy and dazed. After a while, he saw a mecha walking out of the thick fog outside. At first, he thought it was the mecha of the Guanglin Corps, but soon, when the two mechas completely walked out of the fog, Bei was sure that they were not reinforcement from the Guanglin Corps. The outer armor of these two mechas was broken and rusted in many places. There were even vines and grass leaves wrapped around the bodies, and their energy furnaces were no longer working, but they were still able to move without knowing where the energy came from. However, the movements of these two mechas were stiff and weird, which made Bei feel very uncoordinated. They did not look like they were controlled by a driver, but more like puppets controlled by invisible threads.
Suddenly, the two mechas attacked a Fang in a weird posture. Asterisk 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 Heli Wu is gone. In the cab of the white dragon, Luo Yan looked around and confirmed that the strange Heli Wu had disappeared. He felt heavy in his heart. Heli Wu suddenly disappeared, and Luo Yan could only think of two possibilities. One is that Bei encountered an enemy and needed to use other strange things, so he had to release the control of Heli Wu. As for the second possibility, Luo Yan did not want to think about it. But now there is a problem. Without Heli Wu to guide the way, how can we find Bei? At this moment, a faint explosion suddenly came from a distance. Although the thick fog blocked the vision, it could not prevent the sound from spreading. Hearing the explosion, Luo Yan immediately locked the direction and then looked with his Wu-Wang blazing eyes. The world in his eyes turned into a simple drawing. In this drawing, Luo Yan saw a little biological grey light and a thin colorful line of information above the grey light. Chapter 316 Magnetic Flow. Luo Yan, why did you stop? In the cockpit of the mecha Jiuying, Dizeng couldn't help asking when he saw Bei along stop. Bei's weird is gone, but it doesn't matter, I've seen her. Luo Yan's voice rang out in the communication channel. Dizeng nodded and was about to say something when he suddenly heard a roar from above his head. Jiuying immediately set up the scale shield, and the next second, the thick fog above the mecha suddenly lit up with fire, and then a large piece of hot red flames poured down. Although blocked by the scale shield, Dizeng still felt a burning sensation in the cockpit. When the red flames above his head subsided and he put down the scale shield, he saw that the surface of the large shield was red and emitting red light. The thick fog around was swept away by the sudden red flames, so people clearly saw that above their heads, there was a red giant snake circling. This giant snake was coiled in a snake formation, with two pairs of wings on its body. When the four wings flapped, sparks kept falling from the tips of the feathers. Sparks fell to the ground, colliding on the ground, and creating small sparks one after another. In the cab of the white dragon, Luo Yan glanced at the giant beast radar. The radar did not respond at first, but soon a red spectrum signal emerged. A high-level giant beast. Obviously, the giant beast radar was interfered by the ubiquitous fog and lost its original function. Now that the fog has temporarily disappeared, the giant beast signal was scanned. At this time, the computer quickly matched the signal and gave the result. Code, Ming snake. Level, high level 3. Type, scale insect. Features, burning wind, red fire, flying, sonic boom. Weakness unknown. It turned out to be a high-level giant beast. This Ming snake vibrated its wings violently and immediately set off gusts of scorching wind, carrying countless sparks, blowing across the earth and washing many mechas. Immediately, the outer armor of many mechas glowed red, and the temperature rose rapidly, and even some parts began to show signs of melting. Ming snake, burning wind. Dizeng's voice rang out in the communication channel. Team 4, go support your teammates, leave this to us. Without further ado, Luo Yan immediately controlled the white dragon to rush forward, and behind him, the embroidered tiger, Fedian, and Judge Mechas followed. Team 4 of Class 3 quickly moved away from the threat range of the upper level beast. When the thick fog blocked the view, the battle between Jiuying and Ming snake seemed to become out of reach. It was not that Luo Yan's divine storage could see through the fog, otherwise, let alone support. I'm afraid that people in the fog would not even know where they are. After running for a while, suddenly, an old-fashioned mecha fell over in the thick fog in front and fell at the feet of White Dragon. Luo Yan glanced at the mecha, only to see that this severely damaged mecha, whose energy furnace had not even started, suddenly climbed up from the ground in a weird posture without knowing where the kinetic energy came from. Then it staggered into the thick fog. What happened to the mecha just now? It was so badly damaged, and the energy furnace was not activated. How could it move? Kang Shun's voice sounded in the team channel. At this moment, Luo Yan suddenly glanced at the signal of the 8 gates in the formation interface. Then Bei's voice rang out. Student Luo, is that you? Communication restored. Luo Yan was delighted and said in a deep voice, it's me. Be careful, don't get too close. There should be a giant beast lurking nearby, which can control the mecha. Bei reminded hurriedly. As soon as the voice fell, Luo Yan suddenly felt his arms and body tighten slightly.
Then the white dragon lost control and rushed forward suddenly, as if an invisible rope was pulling the mecha. Luo Yang couldn't help but look at the arm of the white dragon, and circles of fire flashed in his red eyes. Suddenly, cobalt blue light streams appeared in Luo Yan's field of vision. Those light streams were like spider silk wrapped around the arms and body of the mecha, and pulled the mecha, making the body out of the control of the driver. When Luo Yan was watching these light streams, a line of text appeared next to the light streams. Magnetic flow. Along with this line of text, there was also a set of data. 127. Luo Yan was stunned. It was not surprising to be able to see the energy beams. On that day in the body of the Sangmentia, he observed a dark current, but he couldn't read the information of these energy beams before. Now this change, I don't know if it is the ability of the Wuwang Zanan or the further deepening of the previous ability after the breakthrough of Shenzang. Oh no, the mecha is out of control. Kang Shun's exclamation sounded in the team channel. My Fidian is the same. Dugu Changson and Yan Wenbo's voices sounded one after another. Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly, and then the white dragon raised the Yuanli light, condensing the virtual image of the Blue Xian Mountains. Luo Yan wanted to resist the pull of those magnetic flows, but after releasing the Yuanli, he noticed that the value of the magnetic flow was decreasing. From the previous 127, it dropped to 58 in an instant. The value dropped, and Luo Yan could clearly feel that the pulling sensation on his body was not as strong as before. He instantly understood that the manifestation of Yuanli could weaken the influence of the magnetic flow on the mecha. Luo Yan immediately shared this discovery in the team channel. Kang Shun and others immediately manifested their Yuanli and condensed various phantoms. Sure enough, the originally uncontrollable mecha became much more obedient. It was just that due to the different visualization techniques and the distinction of realms, the degree of weakening of the magnetic flow by each person was different. Among the several mechas, the embroidered tiger was the least affected, followed by the white dragon, and then the Fidian and Judge. The mecha was able to move, and the white dragon rushed out immediately. The mecha stepped on the ground with one foot, causing it to crack, and rushed straight to Bei, who was besieged by two old mechas. The machine gun fired, and the metal torrent hit an old mecha, lifting off the exhaust pipe, outer armor, and parts behind the mecha. The mecha was shaken, and fragments flew everywhere. In the strange body of a Fang, Bei saw that, as long as he showed his Yuanli, he could weaken the impact, and his face suddenly turned red. I never thought that I could reduce the impact this way. After a moment of shame, Bei took back a Fang, showed his Yuanli, and resisted the control of magnetic flow on the mecha. Then the face of Baman changed into a ghost face with green face and fangs. In an instant, two dark blue ghost hands covered with complex patterns stretched out from the void, suddenly grabbed an old mecha, and then split it left and right, violently tearing the mecha apart, tearing it into two pieces. At this time, the gorgeously painted Xiu who arrived, waving his Yuanli claw knife, tearing the mecha that was blown open by the artillery fire into pieces. Chapter 317. The New Wife. Are you alright? Xiu who swung his Yuanli claw knife and came near Beilong and Beiman. In the cab, Beizio's face was red, and because of the excitement, the muscles on his face were out of control, revealing a weird smile. Hehe. Thank you for coming to see me. Yan Wenbo smiled and said, the captain is here too. Since everything is fine, let's go and meet up with the captain. Luo Yan nodded. Suddenly, he saw the mecha that was torn into two pieces by the strange blue Zio. At this time, the body of the mecha twitched, and then the parts, devices, outer armor, cables, etc. scattered on the ground flew up one after another. With a whoosh, the body and various parts attacked Luo Yan and others. Beilong immediately raised his shield. With a clanging sound, many parts and armor hit the big shield Taishan, then bounced out, and hit other mechas. Other mechas evaded defense one after another. At this time, even the old mecha that was torn apart by the embroidered tiger joined the attack, and the various fragments that fell to the ground whizzed and flew, shooting at the white dragon and other mechas like sharp blades. But at this time, Kang Shun had already released several empty walls, so the fragments hit the invisible barrier and were ejected one after another. Luo Yan then used the Wu Wang burning eyes to look, and in the rising firelight,
He clearly saw that there was at least one magnetic flow connected to the mecha fragments. Those streams with cobalt blue light were like silk threads controlling puppets, easily making these fragments perform various movements. Probably knowing that such an attack would not work, the fragments in the sky stopped and then quickly gathered at one point. Under the action of the magnetic flow, they quickly combined and constructed a new outline. In a blink of an eye, a heavy figure appeared in the mist, which looked like a spider. A huge monster composed of 2 mechs appeared in front of Luo Yan and others. This mechanical spider is much larger than any other mecha. Although it is made of various fragments, it exudes amazing oppression. Moreover, at this time, 3 more dilapidated mechas staggered out from the fog and surrounded the 3rd squad and 4th team. This will never end. Yan Wenbo shouted, Luo, can you find the giant beasts that control these puppet mechas? Luo Yan looked along the magnetic flow and found that they all came from the same direction, so he replied, it should be possible. Leave it to us. You and Xiaobei go and kill the giant beasts that control the mechas. Otherwise we can't go anywhere. After hearing this, Luo Yan immediately controlled the white dragon to run towards the direction of the light blue light. The 8 gates that looked like a white dog also followed closely. In a moment, the 2 mechas had disappeared in the thick fog. The fog was pervasive, and the scenery was distorted into a weird appearance. In Luo Yan's vision, those magnetic currents were clearly visible, extending to the depths of the forbidden area. After running so fast for a while, Luo Yan suddenly shouted softly, be careful. White Dragon stopped and raised his big shield. At this moment, a shadow rushed out from the thick fog in front of him. It turned out to be a truck with only a frame left. But when the truck flew out of the thick fog, the body of the truck kept rotating and deforming, and finally twisted into a metal spear, fiercely colliding with the big shield of White Dragon. Clang! In the teeth-grinding collision sound, White Dragon was shaken by the collision, and Luo Yan felt his left hand suddenly sink, almost knocked away. The metal spear twisted from the truck, bounced away, stopped slightly in midair, turned around and shot towards 8 gates. But at this time, 2 dark blue ghost hands emerged from the void, grasped the 2 ends of the spear, and suddenly twisted it, breaking the spear into 2 pieces, and then threw it into the fog with force. In the fog, in the vision of the Wuang Zuan, Luo Yan saw a ball of grey light suddenly jump up, then float in the air, avoiding the broken gun thrown back by the blue Zio. The machine gun on the shoulder of the White Dragon immediately adjusted the angle, and the muzzle blasted out flames, and bullets shot into the air. This metal torrent blasted into the thick fog, scattering the fog, and exposing the true form of the thing suspended in the air. At first glance, it was thought to be a woman, with long fluffy hair, beautiful features, pale skin, but a pair of red lips as red as blood. Half of the body was naked, with complex patterns with a faint glow, and below the navel, the body gradually evolved into the shape of a spider. At the same time, the fog was cleared, and without interference, the giant beast radar finally responded, and a red spectrum signal appeared on it. Luo Yan immediately asked the computer to match it. After a moment, the result came out. Codename, Net Bright. Level, upper level 2. Type, naked insect. Features, puppet manipulation, gold control, poison, charm, weakness, fear of fire. After reading this information, Luo Yan asked, Xiaobei, can you use the mysterious arts of fire nature? Bei hesitated. I only learned a few simple ones. In other words, she can't. If only Colonel Liang Jian was here. Luo Yan sighed softly. Unfortunately, neither he nor Bei had any means of fire attack, and could not attack the weakness of this net bride. Luo Yan said, it doesn't matter, drive it down first. As he spoke, the Yazi machine gun roared endlessly, driving the lady spider around. That thing seemed to use the magnetic flower spider silk, so it could float in the air, but it was not as convenient as walking on the ground after all. So after dodging for a while, the net bride jumped down from the cobalt blue light flow in the air, landed on the ground. As soon as the network bride landed on the ground, Bei controlled the blue mandrill ghost hand to catch it, and the 10 claws spewed blue fire, and fiercely grabbed the pretty face of the female spider. The half-naked network bride screamed, and its 2 powerful forelimbs suddenly bounced up, and 2 black shadows popped out, colliding with the blue mandrill ghost hand. Clang! Amid the roar, the blue fire was floating all over the sky, and the female spider stumbled and slid back. Its legs kept scratching the ground, tearing the earth into a hole, and it stopped after sliding for hundreds of meters. White Dragon, chased with a shield and the machine gun on his shoulder, did not stop for a moment, and the metal torrent swept over, but the network bride suddenly opened a light curtain with red spots shining in the black anti-membrane. As the anti-membrane unfolded, the metal bullet stream of the Yazi machine gun became a decoration. Luo Yan immediately stopped shooting, and then the long sword Fei Yun shook, lightning struck down, and the tip of the sword burst out in visible ripples, twisting the air and slashing into the anti-membrane. Sword key. A stream of blood suddenly bounced from the chest of the network bride. It screamed and suddenly opened its mouth to spray a column of black and red smoke at the White Dragon. Luo Yan dodged hurriedly and saw that the column of smoke sprayed on a piece of trees. The trees were washed by the smoke, and in a moment, they suddenly rotted and melted into a large amount of black mucus. Network bride, extremely poisonous. Chapter 318, Beheading. After forcing the White Dragon away, the half-naked upper body of the human-like net bride began to light up with cobalt blue light in patches, starting from the pattern near the navel. The blue light filled the patterns like a stream of water, spreading to the flat belly of the spider girl, the towering breasts, the beautiful face, and even the slender arms. The net bride suddenly raised her hands. The earth trembled, as if the demon that had been suppressed for 10,000 years was about to break out of the ground. In the cab of the White Dragon, Luo Yan's red eyes appeared with circles of fire. The unpredictable burning eyes opened, and he immediately saw that from the 10 fingers of the net bride and the countless patterns on the human-like half of the body, tens of thousands of cobalt blue light streams spread out. Magnetic flow. The unrestrained magnetic streams scattered into the ground near the giant beast like blooming flowers, penetrating into the strata and madly absorbing the metal element under the ground. After a moment, the ground cracked. Even without the Wu Wang burning eyes, it was possible to observe with the naked eye that the metal element under the ground were attracted by the magnetic flow and gathered together to form metal wires. The metal wires were woven and twisted together. In an instant, countless metal spears were all around the network bride. As the spider girl pushed forward with both hands, the metal spears were like thousands of arrows, dragging out a dim tungsten light full of death, whistling towards the 2 mechs White Dragon and 8 gates. Luo Yan immediately used the footwork dragonfly touching water to move in front of the 8 gates that looked like a white dog, squatting down and holding up the big shield. At the same time, the Yuanli rose, revealing the phantoms of the blue sea and mountains. Bei was not idle either. He replaced the weird blue Zhao with the offensive and defensive of Fang, and let a large house hundreds of meters high protect the 2 mechs. The tungsten light of death roared, and metal spears blasted at a Fang frantically. The sloping roof, walls, gates, lanterns, spring couplets and other objects of the house were immediately blasted into pieces. After resisting for a few seconds, the house transformed by the weirdness collapsed. Then, metal spears blasted into the blue sea and mountain shadows transformed by the Yuanli. After being weakened to a certain extent, they collided with the big shield station. The sound of ding dong rang out, and most of the spears were either bounced off or pierced into the shield. But the shield could not protect the whole machine, so tungsten lights passed through the outer armor of White Dragon one after another, tearing holes in the outer armor, made of special materials. Amidst the sparks, White Dragon shook violently, and the body gradually slid back. When it was about to hit 8 gates, the metal spears finally shot out, and the body stopped sliding. In the cockpit, Bei's eyes without the eye patch expanded a little bit. He couldn't help but cover his mouth with his hands. Looking out from the panoramic window, countless spears were scattered around the White Dragon, and the edge of the body was severely damaged. I don't know how many holes were torn by the spears. When the White Dragon put down the big shield, it was even more shocking. The shield of Tarzan was pierced by more than a dozen spears, and the spears even penetrated the arm of the mecha. More spears pierced the surface of the shield, making this big shield look like a hedgehog. Bei's heart tightened, and he whispered. Student Luo Yan's voice sounded in the communication channel. I'm fine. At this moment, one by one, the spears fell to the ground, or pierced the shield and the arm of the mecha. They all flew up and pulled away.
distributed around the two mechs, circles after circles, neatly arranged. All the spears pointed at the mechs, like an army ready to go. Luo Yan looked at the network bride with his arms wide open, narrowed his eyes slightly and said, Xiao Bei, can you control the beast and protect yourself at the same time? Bei's eyes flashed with determination. No problem. Okay. Wait for me to give you a signal, and then control the beast. As Luo Yan spoke, he rushed his Yuanli into the acupuncture points. Use the secret method. Open the spirit wheel. Immediately, his reaction, explosive power, and movement speed were all improved. At this time, the spider girl suddenly closed her arms. The several circles of metal spears surrounding the mecha flashed tungsten light again, bombarding the two mechas. The jet behind the white dragon suddenly started, spewing out several blue flames of varying lengths, causing the body to soar into the sky. The network bride immediately waved her hands, like a conductor. Under her command, one metal spear after another dragged tungsten light, flexibly changing the trajectory. Most of them caught up in the air and shot at the white dragon. A small part still bombarded the 8 gates. In midair, the white dragon was like a dragonfly touching the water, using the boost brought by the jet and the spirit wheel to continuously change direction without warning. The mecha changed direction continuously, causing countless tungsten lights to shoot into the air, and at the same time, pounced on the network bride. The spider lady pulled with both hands, accelerating the tungsten lights chasing behind the white dragon, and it was about to hit the back of the mecha. Suddenly, the white dragon moved again. The distance between the mecha and the giant beast was already quite close, and the white dragon suddenly moved, leaving the network bride no time to react. The tungsten lights suddenly bombarded it like a cannonball, and the network bride screamed. The human-like upper body was extremely fragile, and was pierced by metal spears one after another. It was shaking its body continuously, and it was hit, and could no longer control the metal. This allowed Bei, who used the weird paper man, to get rid of an attack, to no longer face the harassment of the metal spears. At the same time, White Dragon appeared behind the giant beast, and the long sword flying cloud was raised, and the Yuanli whistled and gathered, concentrating on the sword. At this time, in the cab of 8 gates, Luo Yan's voice rang out, now, Xiao Bei. Bei's eyes suddenly lit up. The next second, a grey bone hand suddenly grew under the neck of Netis. There was no flesh, no meridians, and no skin. The hand with only bones suddenly lifted the chin of the spider girl, making its head tilt back to the limit, and its neck was almost broken. More bone hands, big and small, long and short, like flowers blooming in spring, suddenly emerged from various parts of the body of Netis. Some of these bone hands pulled the slender arms of Netis behind its back, some pulled its spider legs in different directions, some pulled the hair of Netis to block its sight, and some dug out the eyeballs of the spider girl and pulled them out of the eye sockets. For a time, Netis was disturbed by many things and could not move. Bei saw this and shouted, I've got it under control. Take this opportunity to kill it. Without Bei's reminder, Luo Yan's face was as gloomy as water. White Dragon shook his wrist rapidly, and flying cloud slashed 3 times in an instant. Suddenly, 3 winding streaks of light appeared behind Net New Wife, followed by 3 faint rainbow lights like smoke and haze rising into the sky, breaking through the clouds and mist, and making the clear night sky appear above the mecha again. Secret skill. A long rainbow. 3 consecutive strikes. Chapter 319 Nightmare. After using the spirit opening wheel, Luo Yan's reaction, explosive power, flexibility, toughness and other aspects will be improved. Even the original grand combat skills can be changed according to needs. Just like now. Reduce unnecessary consumption of the long rainbow that overflows thousands of miles, and instead distribute the power to other places, so that the distance of the rainbow light overflows is shortened, but the number of attacks is increased. This skill derived from the secret method made the body of the network bride stiffen first, and then it broke into more than a dozen pieces. After a while, the core of the network bride was collected into a special container and placed in the storage compartment of the white dragon. Luo Yan controlled the mecha and returned with Bei.
Although the white dragon was seriously damaged, the Tesu armor plus the regeneration characteristics of the supercore matrix have allowed the outer armor of the body to begin to recover. It was just that the big shield station had several holes pierced. This level of damage can only be maintained and repaired after returning to the temporary base. Once the network bride died, the mechanical spider and other mecha puppets naturally stopped moving. Yan Wenbo breathed a sigh of relief, and then Luo Yan's voice rang out in the communication channel. "Captain, we killed the behemoth. Well done. Let's go. Let's meet up with the commander." Just then, lights first lit up in the thick fog, and then huge figures appeared in the fog. Soon Dizeng's voice came from the public channel. "Is everyone okay?" In this way, the mecha group of the Guanglin Corps completed the reunion. But when they wanted to contact the Changping Corps, they found that they could no longer communicate because of the distance. So Dizeng asked everyone to rest for a while, and then took everyone to meet up with the Changping Corps. Asterisk 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 Meng Fangxi sneezed, tightened the blanket wrapped around his body, and ate the marching rations in a few mouthfuls. Then, the deputy head of the group, LV Shahan, said not far away, "It's getting late. Today's exploration is suspended. Everyone should rest early. Team 2 and I will guard the first half of the night, and you Team 6 will guard the second half of the night." The captain of Team 6, Ma Shuo, secretly drank a sip of wine, and then tightened the canteen containing white wine. He stood up, and patted the mecha master Xia Orang's pink back. "Let's go to bed." The woman in the driving suit, showing her graceful figure, rolled her eyes at him. "Get out of the way." Ma Shuo smiled and responded, then got into the tent. Meng Fangxi stood up holding a sniper rifle, walked into his tent, and huddled in his sleeping bag. Not long after, he fell asleep. I don't know how long it took. Meng Fangxi suddenly heard the sound of water drops falling on the ground. Drip. It seems that someone's faucet is not tightened. He frowned tightly and suddenly woke up. They are now in the forbidden area. Where is the faucet? Meng Fangxi jumped up, grabbed the sniper rifle next to him, and looked outside the tent vigilantly. There was a faint mist floating in the tent. Although there were lights on inside, the lights were not bright in the mist, adding a bit of ambiguity. Meng Fangxi looked outside the tent. The lights outside were flickering, and people were coming and going. It seemed that the night watchmen were moving. He looked at the time. It was still early for the shift change. He was about to lie down. At this time, a foul smell came from nowhere and got into his nostrils. Meng Fangxi frowned. "It stinks so much. Are the people outside eating snail noodles? Don't pay attention to the impact." Suddenly, a chuckle sounded outside the tent. The laughter was a little hoarse, like a furry tail sweeping across the tip of the heart, which made Meng Fangxi's scalp numb. "Who?" he shouted. The lights and figures outside seemed to be frightened. Suddenly disappeared without a trace. Meng Fangxi was stunned for a moment, then he carefully came to the door, gently lifted the tent with the barrel of the gun, and then put his eyes to the sight of the sniper rifle and looked outside. The sight with infrared vision function allowed Meng Fangxi to see the scene in the dark, but when he looked into the sight, he suddenly jumped up, as if he had been electrocuted. His face turned pale in an instant. "What the hell?" he whispered, then moved to the sight and looked out. In a red light, Meng Fangxi saw an iron gate, with a tablet placed next to the door, a bowl of white rice, and 3 incense sticks stuck on it. "It's real?" Meng Fangxi exclaimed softly. "Am I still dreaming?" He couldn't help pinching his thigh, and as a result, he gritted his teeth in pain. "Not a dream? Then what's going on? Am I not in the forbidden area? What?" Meng Fangxi used the communicator to call the captain for help. "Captain. Captain." A rustling sound came from the communicator, and no one answered. He gritted his teeth and decided to go out and take a look. Meng Fangxi found a tactical light, equipped it to the sniper rifle, then used the barrel to open the tent. He carefully observed for a while and found nothing unusual before going out. As soon as he came out, he found himself in a narrow corridor. The corridor was very dim, and there was a faint sound of running water in a sewage canal next to it, and rats came out from time to time. He looked back, but his tent was nowhere to be found. There was only a thin mist, and a long alley led to nowhere. Meng Fangxi used the tactical light on the gun to observe the surroundings. Sewage canals, aisles, iron gates, spring festival couplets, tablets, billboards, chalk graffiti, and cracked walls. He was stunned. He was very familiar with such a scene. This was where he lived when he was a child. The fringe of urban and rural areas, dark apartment buildings, rats and cockroaches, street walkers and drug addicts. All kinds of scenes flashed by. That was the past that Meng Fangxi least wanted to recall, but now, he was in it. If I'm not dreaming, then it's an illusion. Illusion. Meng Fangxi looked to the side, at the grey fog that was everywhere in the corridor. Misty canyon, fog, and a dominant beast. Meng Fangxi's eyes lit up. I remember that among the characteristics of the owner of the forbidden area, there is an item called illusion. Could it be that I'm in an illusion now? He immediately stimulated his yuan li, trying to get rid of the illusion, but at this moment, the door of the apartment behind him suddenly creaked open. Meng Fangxi suddenly remembered the various urban legends when he lived in the apartment building. One of them was his childhood nightmare. Isn't it so unlucky? As he spoke, he suddenly smelled the stench again. The smell was like that of a corpse that had been rotting for many days. Meng Fangxi slowly turned around, raised his sniper rifle, and let the tactical light shine into the darkness of the door. The light shone into the iron gate, into the dusty living room, and onto a chair. On that chair, with her back to the door, in the darkness, sat a thin white-haired woman. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.